Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Elite Ari Media Digest for all the stuff that I finished in April of 2023. So it's been a whole month. I don't think I've uploaded any other unscripted videos, so here we are. Um, do I have to say anything here? It's always weird every time when I get to this at the end of the month, and I'm like, oh, am I forgetting something? But I hope I'm not. I think this one will be shorter, but I guess I say that every time, and it never ends up being shorter, so I guess we'll see. But first up, The Crucible. So this is a movie. It was 2 hours and 3 minutes long. I watched it on the 3rd of April, and I basically have nothing to say about it here because if you go to Secondary ENT, which is Kyle Entertainment's second channel, you can see me talk about it with him for like, I don't know, an hour and a half or something. Generally, it was a 4 out of 5 movie, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very engaging, I guess I would say. It's about like the there's not really a spoiler. It's about the Salem witch trials. It's very interesting, I would say. It's well directed, engaging. There's a bunch of interesting characters. But if you want to hear more, go to Secondary NT and check out that discussion. But getting into the proper thing here, we've got My Hero Academia Season 6. So this is, of course, the famous anime. It is 25 episodes long. I started it last year, so the 15th of October 2022, finished it 9th of April of this month. I watched the dub as well. I guess I didn't specify that. Let's turn this on. Yeah, and generally this was a 4 out of 5. So what are my overall thoughts? I guess I love My Hero Academia. I have loved it since the beginning. I watched it in 2016, I think. I also watched that movie in, I think, January's Digest, and that was pretty good. I think this is probably better than that movie. I read the manga, so this is the first season, actually, where I have read the manga stuff for this before watching the anime. So last time I was an anime only, and here I am now understanding stuff. So I did go into this with, like, a preconceived notion of, like, my thoughts on how much I like this and all that. And generally, I think they did a decent job. Like, no matter what, this adaptation I think is a very good adaptation. So in the worst case it's just going to be okay or like good, but in the best case it's going to be amazing, as it usually is in the past. But yeah, let's get into the notes. So this season is like split into a few different parts, I guess. The first part was I believe it's called the War Arc, which is basically this giant thing where you've got, like, on the one side you've got basically every hero we've ever known and ever will know, and including all the students and everything. And on the other side, we've got basically every villain we've ever known and every villain we will know, which is like the League of Villains, the God, I don't even remember what they are. Some other Redestro, his organization, and this is the first half of this season is basically a giant fight between these two. And when I read the manga, this was my favorite, like, story part, my favorite arc basically up until this point. I think now the final arc is my favorite in My Hero Academia so far. We'll see how it ends. You know, it's not over yet. I won't give any spoilers or anything, but I really like this final arc. But yeah, when I read this was my favorite. I'm like, man, it's so good, so much action, so many character moments. I loved Aizawa. He had some great moments. The art was beautiful. Maybe it's like that throughout the entire manga, and I just didn't know because I started, like, reading basically at this point. Like, I didn't go back and read the old arcs that I'd already seen the anime for, but the art was great. I think generally the art, like, as a comparison to the anime, the art is, like, highly detailed and looks really good on its own, but sometimes the action can be a bit hard to follow. Whereas in the anime, it's very trivial to follow. That's like the whole point of this anime. But yeah, the adaptation, I loved the manga, but the adaptation I was a bit disappointed in. I know everyone loves it, is what I gathered. I only watched 2 reactions. I watched the normies and I watched Blind Wave, and they both seemed to love it, especially Blind Wave. They thought it was like the greatest thing, and My Hero Academia is back, and oh, it's so good and hype and everything. And I know on Reddit, everyone seemed to love it on the anime subreddit. I thought the content is, of course, good. You know, I love the manga and all that, but it was very, it felt like a middle kind of level of quality when it came to, like, the production side of things. It kind of felt like every episode you'd get like a build up that would slowly build up toward the end of the episode, and it's like, okay, we're going to finally reach a climax, and then it's like, okay, the episode's over. Next time we're going to have the climax. But the beginning of the next episode kind of felt like, okay, we're back at the beginning, we're going to start with a recap, and it just, like, doesn't build up to it properly, I guess. And it kind of feels like you never really reach a big emotional climax or anything. In separate to that, I guess there wasn't like there wasn't really standout animation, I guess, as well. Which like every season of My Hero Academia, I guess even every like sub season, because each season comes out in like two cools, or what, not cools, but like two like main arcs in each season. There'll always be like one moment at least where it's like, wow, this is amazing. Like season 1, you've got the All Might fight. Season 2, you get the Todoroki and Deku, and then you get the Stain fight with Ida and all that. Season 3, you get the muscular fight, and then part 2. Well, part 2 is a bit different actually. I don't even remember part 2. But then you also get the All Might fight in season 3, and then you get the Bakugo and Deku fight at the end of season 3. So there's a lot there. Season 4, you get Overhaul, and then you get the, I was gonna say the sports festival, but I don't know if that's really animation. Oh, not the sports festival. Jesus, the singing festival. Season 5. What do you get? You get the what was the first half of season? In season 5 you get the Ida scene basically where he's fighting in Class B, and you get this really crazy animation of him like gliding through the ice and everything. And then at the end of season 5 you get the Paranormal Liberation Front stuff. So you get a bunch of really cool animation with Twice and Shigaraki and all that. But I also forgot to mention in season 4 you get the Endeavor fight at the end of season 4. That was amazing. And then now in season 6, at the beginning here, I feel like there was nothing. Like nothing stood out to me. I was like, wow, this is like the climax of what I enjoyed in the manga. But at this point, there's nothing that really feels special in the adaptation of it. But yeah, so that's generally my overall thoughts of the first half. Let me look at my notes if I missed anything. Yeah, I loved the manga. The anime was a bit disappointing. Oh, the opening, I guess. There's 2 openings this season. The first one, I think, is more interesting. The second one has significantly, like, it has Crazy Sakuga by Yutaka Nakamura. But the first one, I love the first 20 seconds of that opening. It gets me hyped, like, every time. It's like, da-da-da-da, da-da-da. You know, it's so great. Love that. But, oh, look at this. I got some standout moments from the first part of this season. So this war arc kind of... I think it's like one of the first, it's either the first episode or the second episode. I even talked about it in a scripted video I made, but Kaminari, the electricity guy, he does this big move and like saves everyone, and the reason he saves everyone is because he's like, I think it's Midnight, or one of them tells him, oh, you know, think of the people most close to your heart, and he thinks of Jiro when he's doing it. I'm like, oh, this is so cute. That was a great moment. The Miko episode was fantastic. She is awesome. And Twice's death. I think that's one part of this season that I think I preferred this much more in the anime, where when I was reading through the manga, I couldn't, because of the art was a bit confusing, I couldn't really tell what was going on. So I was like, oh, who died here? Did Hawks die here? Is Dabby, not Dabby, is Twice dying here? But in the anime, it was very, you got the music and everything, and you got the sad like thing dripping down. I'm like, man, I got really sad, and that was very effective. So well done anime for that part. Yeah, then we get to the second. I don't think there's anything I should talk about anymore. Am I forgetting anything? No. Then we get to the second part of the season, which is like Deku like goes on his own. And then there's the Lady Nagant stuff. And the production here is crazy. So it's like they stepped up from the beginning of this season, which to me was missing a lot of the production charm that I enjoyed from past seasons of My Hero Academia. But they stepped it up here. They got a bunch of stuff. Like, particularly, I got notes on 2 shots. One was the amazing Sakuga shot of Deku versus Muscular, where he, like, punches through Muscular and, like, all the water goes up on the sides. And it's like Deku is, like, center frame, and it's so fast and cool and has all this energy and stuff. And it's fantastic. And that was a candidate for this background image here, but I preferred something much more. We'll talk about that later. And the other one was the Nakamura scene in the Lady Nagant fight, which is like, he's like, Deku's swinging around and all that, and he does this, the Fajin kick and everything. It's so cool. Every scene that Nakamura animates is fantastic. But yeah. Another thing that's interesting about this second half is that Lady Nagant is a character that similar to Twice's death. I did not care about her at all when I was reading the manga. I was like, okay, she's like somewhat interesting, kind of comes out of nowhere, kind of disappears into nothingness suddenly. But I was incredibly excited to see her in the anime, which is interesting because I feel like, I don't know why, like there's a difference between when I'm reading a manga or or consuming anything the first time. I will have my opinions and I won't enjoy Lady Nagant. But then over time, like the idea festers or whatever, not festers in a positive way, you know, whatever that word is, like develops, I don't know, grows, you know, it's kind of positive. And I start to like feel nostalgic towards this character that I didn't really like that much the first time. So I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see this character that was well defined in my memory but wasn't positively defined. I don't know how to. Hopefully someone knows what I'm saying. But yeah, when she showed off, it was amazing. Her fight was great. I enjoyed it in the anime. So there we go. Anime better than manga in this context. I think generally, actually, maybe this entire arc, like Deku going on his own, fighting, and his friends coming and all that at the end, I think that was I probably prefer that in the anime, the way it was handled. But okay, now I have a general point in my notes about how I like My Hero Academia because of the emotions. That's almost certainly the main reason why I like it. Like I mentioned before, like that scene with Kaminari, doing his best for the sake of Jiro, or not for the sake of everyone, but thinking of Jiro in his mind. That gets to me. I'm like, man, My Hero Academia is so great. There's very few other anime that do it this well. But second to that emotion, being the reason that I like My Hero Academia, I think All for One is a very close second. He's almost certainly my favorite character in this entire story, and he like carries the show at certain points. But what have I written? I said, All for One is a close second. He is smart and always has the upper hand. He is physically giant and deformed, so he's kind of like really scary to look at, and he's a really interesting design, especially how he doesn't have eyes and he's like destroyed now and he's carrying around this machine with him everywhere he goes, but he's still like really physically imposing. It's a great physical design. What else? Yeah, it's so cool seeing him on Tartarus using his charisma and like physically imposing, like he's standing up there, and he like controls all of these otherwise crazy criminals, and he's like kind of imposing his rule over them, based on his charisma and all that. I really enjoy that. It's also terrifying in that scene where he appears out of nowhere next to Lady Nagant and Overhaul, and it's like, wow, this scary, like, otherworldly creature who's actually just a man, is there. But I think other than that, those are just like really superficial things I like him for. But he's just really generally really interesting. How he claims to hate All Might, and he claims to be he claims that that's like the bane of his existence, and he never wished that happened, and he would be so powerful, and he would be living his dream if All Might did not interfere with him. But at the same time, it seems that he enjoys having an enemy to fight. Like he enjoys having that All Might in his life, like a comic book antagonist to him being a villain, you know. And it's kind of, I don't know, I think that's just really interesting. You don't really see that often. Usually the villain will be someone who just wants to see the world that they want come to fruition. You know, usually you think of that as like a compelling villain, where it's like Thanos, and it's like he has a vision for the world that he wants to enact, and he truly believes in it. But in this case, to me, it feels like All for One kind of has fun with playing the villain, which is, it's just an interesting thing. I wrote that he derives joy from destroying All Might's legacy. Perhaps more so, yeah, like perhaps he feels more joy from that than he would feel that if he accomplished his dreams and lived a peaceful life as the ruler of the world. So I think in my like interpretation of All for One, he enjoys the fight more than he does the end goal, which is really interesting. I also said I won't spoil anything, but I said there's a minor detail that is really cool in the final arc of the manga that makes him incredibly interesting and relatable, kind of, concerning his love of media and why he chooses to act the way he does. Now, I won't spoil it, but it's just, if you've read the manga, you probably know what I'm talking. Maybe you don't know, but just know there's something in there, right? Well, eventually, when it gets to the anime, I'll talk about it like 3 years from now, whatever. All for One's great. Oh, and I also I wrote notes on how I've been hearing a lot of slander about All for One, right? In both the manga chapters and just generally on just everywhere I look. Like they claim that they wish that he died, All for One, and that Shigaraki had become the main antagonist instead. And I think they're wrong, clearly, because I love All for One, and I think he's way better than Shigaraki. But the only reason I'm bringing this up is that it also reminded me of the same like a similar kind of idea of how Gohan should have become the hero after the Cell games, and how the Buu arc is bad because Goku like takes over again. And I also disagree with that heavily. Like the Buu arc is my favorite arc of Dragon Ball Z. And I have no idea if it would have been better if Gohan had become the hero instead of Goku. But retroactively, I guess the only way I've ever seen it is the way that Goku is the hero, and it is fantastic. And I think it's a similar way here, where sure, you can theorize on all these alternative ways that might have been better, but the way we have it now, I love it and I wouldn't change it. So I guess I disagree with those people there. But anyway, what else? Yeah, the end of the arc with Lady Nagant, there was the Deku versus Class A fight, and I thought that was really cute. And one thing I thought was interesting is how it ends with Bakugo basically calling Deku Izuku, calling him by his name basically, and ending the bullying, you know, after all these years, and opening up to him and saying, basically opening up to him and saying, "We want you back," or whatever. And Deku being like, "I'm sorry for saying that I was too far ahead of you," or whatever, something like that along those lines. But the fact that the reason I'm bringing this up is that I didn't really feel it. I felt it emotionally, but I didn't tear up or get like extremely involved until I watched the reaction of Blind Wave for some reason. And when I was watching their reaction and seeing that scene again, then I teared up, and I was like, wow, okay, I guess there's some reactions are worthwhile, you know. Somehow they can drag emotions out of a piece of media that weren't there initially. It's interesting. I don't know what this note is, but they take Deku to UA, and Ochaka gives her speech to all the people that are afraid. And this is the best scene in the entire season, one of the best scenes in the last couple of seasons, and it made me cry. And it's been a long time since My Hero has actually made me cry, like truly, not just like tear up a little bit, but cry. It's like, yeah. And I think it's just the over bit, like it's her speech about how Deku has come so far, and all of these heroes are trying so hard all of these students, I guess, are trying so hard to be heroes and everything, and all the heroes are trying hard to be heroes. So the music gets to me, but it also gets to me because they show like flashbacks of how far they've come, and like the first interaction that Ochako and Deku had, and like it's playing the music that they played, like, you know, back in the first season. I'm getting nostalgic thinking of, oh my god, this show has come so far, and I've come so far since like the 6 years or whatever that I've watched it. And that really got to me quite a lot. What else did let's see. So it's been a while since My Hero did this. It's just the overbearing loud music that reminds me of all the times we've seen at the My Hero Academia school. And Deku seeing the love his friends have for him, and then Koda and the big woman, whatever, I don't know if she's been named yet, going to him and like crying. It's fantastic. This is the best scene. And then there's also this scene in the background image here, which was seeing little Ochako like laughing or smiling and getting joy out of this, all the people cheering for the hero that was struggling. Like there was essentially this hero who struggled to beat someone, and he was really like depressed or whatever, and then everyone cheers for him and he gets happy, and I'm like, oh, this is so sad and cute and happy. And then Ochako's like so happy for him, and it's like the innocence of childhood and not caring about the hero that's actually doing the great thing, but caring about all the joy and everything that surrounds the hero. I love it so much. Oh, yeah, I don't really have words other than that. It's fantastic. It's things like this where I'm like, nothing compares to My Hero Academia when it comes to emotional moments like this, like the setup and the payoff. Not even the setup and the payoff. It's just I made a video about this where like there are bursts of emotion in My Hero Academia that come out of nowhere and will get me so hard, and then they'll just disappear, like, and I'll appreciate it. It's like, wow, that was beautiful. Anyway. Another miscellaneous note, I guess, here is that Deku's new model is really awesome. Like in the second half of this season, he like looks slightly different. And I thought it was like, initially I was like, okay, clearly he looks different. But maybe it's just because the environment is dark, and like that he's slightly being drawn to look a bit darker or something. But when I saw the other day, like only a few days ago, I saw this random post on Twitter that showed like a bunch of the different animation directors for this season. And what was interesting is that all the shots that I thought, oh wow, this looks really interesting and cool, and I prefer this look of Deku, was all done by one animation director. Like they were all bunched in the same thing. So I thought that was cool. And his name was Yoshihiko Umakoshi. So I like that guy. His way of drawing Deku, or I guess directing the animators to draw Deku, I think is the best and looks really cool. So look him up. If you're really interested, you could probably look at my Twitter likes history. And if you're watching it very recently to when this video came out, I think it's like either the most recent or like the second most recent thing I liked. So have a look at that. Yeah, so then Deku goes back to UA, and basically we get like at the finale or like the final 2 episodes or something. So Stain talks to All Might. This was a scene I really enjoyed in the manga. The anime does it great. And just generally, the idea of Stain being so integral to the heroes having any hope at all in this um, final confrontation is really interesting and cool. Like Stain always was one of the most interesting characters. He's like a villain who does villainous things for the sake of good. And what did I say? And him telling All Might to take care of the threat, then take him out for the people he's killed is great. Yeah, so it's like Stain is truly a twisted but good person deep down. And I do feel like kind of maybe that is where the manga will go in the end. Like maybe the second last scene in the whole show will be like Stain and All Might confronting each other before we get like, the actual true scene with like Shigaraki and Deku or something. I don't know. But that was cool. Another kind of miscellaneous thing. So seeing at the right at the end of the final episode, we get this World Council assembling basically due to All Might requesting aid. And I think firstly, the idea is really cool, like seeing a bit more of the world outside of Japan. But more generally, I think it's really cool how All Might is so respected, like universally. Like despite losing to, I guess he beat All for One, but he lost his power and he's weak now, basically. He doesn't do anything anymore. And you would expect that there would be more people who would be cynical of that, who would treat him as like, oh, he's a failed hero. He used to be a hero, but now he's no one. You would expect these elites, like these global leaders of all other countries, would be like, oh, Japan's failed, or their number one hero is nothing anymore. But it's not like that at all. Like all these people respect All Might, and are like, okay, so All Might has called for help. We have to help him. It's just so interesting to see how I can't imagine any other, like, it's just a really My Hero Academia thing where it's like the positivity prevails here and everyone is willing to help All Might, even though he's not a perfect person and he did fail. Or not fail, but he yeah, you know what I mean when I say he failed. He wasn't able to continue being the hero that everyone wanted him to be, but everyone still respects him for it. So let me see if I covered that whole note. No one on the council questions that he is a good man who the world should respect. You would expect the people to turn on him in another story, but not this one, yeah. And then the final scene, or maybe it's not the final scene, but the final scene I was excited about was Star and Stripe, her entrance. I love her. I won't spoil anything, but I love every fight she's in, I love, and when she showed up, I was proud to be an American, even though I'm not an American. I was like, hell yeah, freedom. She won't be tied down like the Americans, they will do what they want. They won't be tied down by bureaucracy. They will do what's right. And she is here to represent that. And that's it's so great. So exciting. And I really hope they make her upcoming fight just an absolute sucker fest. Get Yutaka Nakamura back. Get every good animator that's ever existed. I don't know any others because I'm only a fan of him. Get him to make the best fight the best fight. So, yeah. Anyway, that's My Hero Academia. Next up was Minecraft. So, yeah, okay, if you don't know, this is a game. It's a variable number of hours. The goal is to defeat the Ender Dragon, and you can take as long as you want to do that. For me, I have no idea how long it took. I know it's definitely less than 100 hours because the other day when I went and checked, the number of hours was like 101 or something. But I've played way past the point where I beat the Ender Dragon. If I were to guess, it'd probably be like 50 hours or 60 hours in. I probably beat the Ender Dragon. So yeah, I played this 23rd of February and I finished it on the 9th of April. And this, yeah, so my history with Minecraft is that it's interesting to say that most people would probably think that I started early. So I played this game in 2011. That was when I first played it. And so I guess I'm an old frog, I played this when it was in beta, before there were Endermen or anything, before the big major lighting update where torches could be a bit more dynamic in the way they lit things. But after all these years, I've played almost exclusively multiplayer. I have played occasionally single player, but I never get too far. And I've never beat the game solo. So I've beat it in multiplayer. I've beat it a few times in multiplayer, and I've beat it once in multiplayer hardcore, where we went from beginning to end without dying, but it was 3 of us, so it wasn't just me. So this time I thought, okay, I'll play Minecraft and I'll beat it by myself. And I did. But I guess what I was trying to say is that 2011 probably sounds like a long time to you, but I remember when I first heard of Minecraft, all of my friends were like, huh, you've never heard of Minecraft? We played that ages ago, and I was like, oh my god, how did I miss out on this? It's 2011, you guys were all playing in 2010, a whole year ago. That's like 20% of our life or something at that point. So yeah, I thought that was really funny, but anyway. So my biggest takeaway from this playthrough is how when I was a kid, I, I guess when I was like 14 or whatever, whenever I played this, the world, like the game felt so large. Firstly, I guess when I played it initially, there was no end to the game. They added that later, but it felt like, how am I going to beat this game? Like, how am I, say when the Ender Dragon was added, how am I going to get to the Ender Dragon? It's so daunting, and I have to build so many things. I have to mine diamonds. Diamonds are so hard to mine. I have to do all these tasks and find the end. How am I going to find a stronghold? It's so difficult, and it just felt so impossible. But as a adult here, I guess, it feels significantly easier. Like, there's only like 4 steps you have to take. Like, first you have to you probably have to get diamond armor. You don't have to, but you probably do, you know. You have to go to the end and fight some enemies there, so they drop the blaze rods, you know. Then you just need to go to the end and beat the dragon. It's like it's only a few steps, but it's crazy how simple it is and how grand it felt in the past. But that was the main takeaway. But I should probably add, this is a 5 out of 5. It's probably not fair to to really classify this, because I love Minecraft. It's the game I've probably it is the game I've played the most in my entire life. I've got thousands and thousands of hours in this game, so it's a 5, you know. But it is what it is. So next up, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So this is a movie, of course, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's 2 hours and 4 minutes long, and I waited until it came to digital to watch it at home, and that was on the 18th of April. And, excuse me. So I knew a few things before going into this, because I waited so long, and I'd see things on TikTok or whatever, very minor spoilers. So I knew that people didn't like it, is the first thing, because obviously everyone was hyped. I mean, in my experience, everyone was hyped up for this movie, because this is like, they're going to the quantum realm, they're going to have Kang the Conqueror, there's going to be multiverse stuff, it's going to be crazy, and everyone was so hyped, and I thought, okay, this is either going to be really good or really bad. And I saw on TikTok and Twitter and everything, I saw everyone hated this, and I also heard that the acting for Cassie was really bad and people didn't like that. And I also heard that MODOK was very goofy and people didn't like that. Now, me hearing these things about like the acting of Cassie and MODOK being goofy and all that, I was like, okay, well, that's like, these are like pretty dumb reasons to hate a movie. Maybe I'll be like the gigabrain genius who watch this and actually enjoy it. So I was pretty confident that I was going to watch this and like it quite a bit, and maybe it'll be my favorite Marvel movie or something, you know, because like I'm a contrarian and all that. But overall, this was a 3 out of 5. So it's not terrible. Everyone will try and paint this as a terrible movie, which is like big plot conveniences or whatever, but it's truly not terrible. It's not one of the worst Marvel movies. It's a decently entertaining movie. I think I would maybe watch it again once. I would not probably want to watch it more than that. I think Kang is a very, very engaging villain. But I think it's purely because of the performance. I can't remember what his Jonathan Majors, I think, is his actor's name. Who knows if he's going to be Kang anymore? But he is fantastic as Kang. It is the best performance in the MCU to date. He is incredibly. I'll probably talk about this later. He's incredibly subtle, but I love it. What are my notes? Yeah, Kang is very engaging. He's probably my favorite villain in the MCU, or at least he was until the end of this movie. So the introduction to him is all great, but it all goes downhill from there. And then eventually he loses quite easily in the end, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, other than that, the visuals are great. And when I say visuals, I don't just mean like, oh, the CGI or whatever, but the directing is actually really interesting. There's a few really cool shots in this, more so than other Marvel movies. Yeah. Now I just have a bunch of random notes, I guess. So Janet, who is the old woman, who's been in the quantum realm before, she was incredibly frustrating all the way from the beginning, because she's constantly trying to hide her like past experience and what she knows about Kang, and she keeps saying, "Oh, we don't have time. I can't explain this. I can't explain it. We don't got time." But she does have time, and it's just like really frustrating to get to that point, you know. Not to get to that point, but like to see that in a movie where I'm like, come on, you can just explain it here. It will solve so many things. So that was frustrating. I also have a miscellaneous note where it's like, she looks like she's a very, that character and actor, very interesting, because she clearly is old. But at the same time, if you like squint your eyes or like look a certain way, she like looks really young as well. I don't know, it's a bit strange. Oh, and the massive surprise in this movie that somehow I wasn't spoiled on, and I was not expecting at all, is that the bad guy from the first Ant-Man movie is MODOK. I mean, that's great. I thought that was a really interesting idea. It makes sense. He'd be in the quantum realm. And why not make him MODOK? It's really cool. And I certainly was not expecting it. Now I have a note saying, what do I think about MODOK? He's certainly goofy. I think it fits the tone of Ant-Man. And I think interestingly enough, I think it also does fit the tone of Kang, like being Kang's sidekick. But he doesn't do much, I guess, is the thing. Like, he's just there. And his best moment is when he's dying and he's like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I want. And then he like chooses to die. So I think maybe it's like a waste of a character. I don't know. He was fine. I guess I'll just say he's fine. Okay, now Kang. I have a bunch of notes on Kang, but maybe I've already talked about most of them. I said he's a great mystery box at the start of the movie. Yeah, because you see him crash down, and it's like, who is this guy? Because we've obviously seen Kang in Loki, or not Kang, but we've seen the He Who Remains in Loki, and he's a certain version of Kang, and it's like, okay, we know him very well. What's this guy going to be like? So I wrote, is he evil? Who exiled him? What does he want? Why does he have a scar? I think he had a scar on his face. It was crazy. Is he trustworthy? Like, it feels like behind his eyes and his like subtle performance, it feels like he has a grand story behind him. And he commands a lot of like attention when he speaks. Oh yeah, I wrote it. Yeah. So I said he speaks so softly, and particularly this is something I really like about Revolutionary Girl Utena, the dub specifically, where all the characters speak incredibly softly. And it kind of commands you to like pay attention to it and like listen to what they're saying really attentively. Whereas if they're talking normally, it's kind of like, okay, this is a conversation. I've had a conversation many times in my life. I don't have to be that attentive. But when Kang or Utena is talking so softly and like showing these nuanced emotions, you know, it like commands your attention. And I thought it's just my way of trying to rationalize why I love his acting so much. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting if they have to recast him, because he is the main draw for me of the MCU right now. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. I guess I pointed out one specific scene, which is when it's in the Janet flashback with Kang and Janet. It's the scene where Kang notices that Janet saw his mind, and he's just like, he kind of like looks at her, and he doesn't get angry, he doesn't look surprised, he doesn't look happy or anything. He just looks at her and he's like, it's like, what did you see? It's just like, what is he thinking right now? You know, it's really interesting. I love his performance. This is a miscellaneous note, but Kang's technology is very interesting, because it feels like he isn't a powerful person. He kind of just does feel like a human, but he feels like he's automated everything. Like, it feels like his suit does stuff on its own, you know? Like, it has a mind of its own or something. And to me, it feels like his power came from taming a god, basically. Like, maybe he created an AI in his suit that is like a god-level intelligence, and the power that he has was the ability to control that AI. Now, this isn't based on anything, it's just the vibe I got from it. But to me, it's interesting that as a man himself, he is not powerful, but his ability to tame God is what makes him powerful. I wonder if they'll explore something like that. I got no idea, but that's the vibe I got from his appearance in this movie. Okay, now the bad, I guess. So the conflict in this movie, the conflict arises from the difference in view between Janet and Kang, basically, where they're talking about how Janet like condemns Kang because he's going to wipe out universes. Like, he's a truly evil person because he wipes out universes. And I feel like the movie needs to give reasons for why we should care about Kang killing universes. And my suggestion would be like, I guess my comparison I made is that, like, in Attack on Titan, it's completely understandable to be pro-rumbling until you see Ramsay and Halil being trampled. And at that point, you're like, you kind of get it. You're like, okay, I understand why people would be opposed to this. But before that, it's a very intellectual thing where you have to be like, okay, I understand morally, and if we're talking logically and all that, Eren shouldn't do this. But you shouldn't judge anyone for not feeling it until they see some part of it, you know? And basically, I think in this case, we should have seen something like that. Because to me, it's like, how do we know that what he's doing is evil? Like, he's operating on such a different scale than we are, that why is it so obviously evil? like, what, I've read a few hypotheticals here. Like, what if he's wiping out universes to prevent the destruction of all other universes? Like, maybe if he doesn't wipe these out, then everyone dies. Like, maybe he's doing something for the greater good. What if he's wiping out universes because those universes that he's wiping out eventually discover the multiverse, and that leads to those universes destroying other universes? Like, I think that's a pretty, maybe you could justify wiping out those universes, maybe you couldn't, I don't know. Maybe the fact that because there's infinite universes, why is there weight to any universe? Like, if there's an infinity, then the individual shouldn't matter, but maybe it should. Like, this is the discussion you should have in the movie, not like just assume that it's obviously bad. Like, why is life important when there is infinite beings in an infinite multiverse? Like, I'm sure life is important, but you don't give me a reason to, like, it's not an obvious thing to me. Like, I don't know. And like, you don't even explore, like, Janet doesn't even explore the idea of if he makes them suffer or not. Like, I think that's a big difference. Like, if he is taking his army somewhere and using his army to destroy something, I think it's incredibly different to him just snapping his fingers and wiping out a universe and doing it with where no one suffers. Like, is he trying to cause suffering? Is he not? Like, that would change my perspective on if he is evil or not, you know? But the movie doesn't explore any of this at all, and I think it suffers because of it. Anyway. So, yeah, I got some Kang lore here, apparently. So Kang is fighting against something that happens at the end of time, an army of Kangs. Oh, yeah, so this is just me trying to piece together. So what it sounds like is that this Kang escaped from a war at the end of time, and that ties into what happens with Loki. And basically, at the end of time, all the Kangs fight, and only one of them remains, and that's he who remains, and that's the guy we see in Loki. But also this guy, because this guy escaped into the quantum realm. Something like that. I don't know, that's kind of what I pieced together. He also says a line of, "You're out of your league, Ant-Man." And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh no, Ant-Man's gonna beat him. Because it's like, if you say that in a movie, it's kind of like the villain is antagonizing the protagonist, and therefore the protagonist will prove him wrong in the end. So in that, by saying those few words, he sowed the seeds of his own destruction. I thought that was pretty funny, in a negative way, I guess. It's also, this is like this is definitely a nitpick, but I think it's incredibly frustrating that Kang is never free in this movie. He never escapes the quantum realm, even temporarily. Like, I think it would have been really cool to see him taste the freedom, to see him almost exert an influence on the real world, like the non-quantum realm, but he just never does. And he like, it would be interesting to like send him to the free world and bring him back to his prison, but he never does, and he like doesn't feel very. Like, it never felt like he was going to get his way at all throughout this entire movie. And I think that would have been an interesting additional tension, you know, to add that. But it's a bit of a nitpick. I also think the movie completely fails on portraying Kang as consistently powerful. At certain points, he seems unbeatable. But then, fair enough, his engine gets taken away. He can't control his god AI anymore, maybe. He's still powerful, but he's not godlike anymore. But then he gets the engine back. And he doesn't do anything, basically. So it's a bit of a weird thing where it's like, I thought that this engine made him a god and made him destroy multiverses, but he just doesn't do anything, and he doesn't get portrayed as arrogant or anything. He just, you don't even see him. Like, he's off screen for most of this like final fight when he has the engine back. It's very strange. Like, why can't he just, as soon as he gets the power back, just crush his enemies instantly? I don't know. Yeah, then I said, what is Kang even doing during this final fight? And then I got quite frustrated. I said, what a pathetic idiot loser. No wonder he lost the battle on the outside and got exiled. Like, Jesus Christ, I'd be embarrassed of him if I were a Kang. So I was very frustrated by the main Kang in this movie, Kang the Conqueror, because he does nothing. There's a big fight going on, and I have no idea where he is. He's in his room. I got no idea. Is he in? I just don't know. It's terrible. But one good thing is, and I think most people probably hated this, I would imagine, like a normie TikTok viewer or something, but I loved how Kang was beaten by the ants, the ants that were sent to the quantum realm and evolved rapidly and became this like sophisticated society. I thought that was really cool. And I would have even loved if that was like the resolution to like the next Avengers movie or something. It's so like wacky and like lore-wise, it's really interesting. Like, if a species evolves so far in so limited time, then like what can they accomplish? It's just so cool. I thought that was really cool. So I'm not like completely, I don't hate that Kang lost. I just hate how he wasn't portrayed as particularly intimidating by the end of this movie. Not intimidating, particularly clever, I guess, by the end of the movie is my issue with it. Anyway, now I point out a few plot things. So why did I don't, maybe, if I don't know if anyone's gonna remember this, I don't even remember this, but at some point apparently Hope shrinks down the core. Oh yeah, because you got Ant-Man coming in with his like many different probabilities of himself, and they like lift him up and so that he can shrink the core so that he gets Cassie back. But then on the other hand, you've got Hope coming in to save like Scott, but she is the one who like she also helps him shrink the core down so that Kang can take it. I don't know why she does that. Why does she need the core? It feels like her actions there are completely contradictory to her goal, which is to stop Kang from getting the core. Now maybe I'm sure there's probably like that seems so stupid to me that I'm sure there has to be an explanation that I've missed. So feel free to fill me in. That was really strange. Yeah, then when Ant-Man holds the core, for some reason Kang doesn't just instantly teleport to him and take it from him, so I got no idea. Then I said, why did Kang break the deal with Scott? So basically Kang made a deal with Ant-Man that, okay, you get the core, I'll give you your daughter, you get to go free, whatever. But for some reason he breaks the deal, and I'm like, okay, I guess it's just it's either that it's either like poor writing of an intelligent villain, where it's like, okay, this guy is like really interesting and nuanced and all that, but they wrote him very boringly or whatever in the end. Or it's intentionally just trying to reveal that he's not actually a good and interesting villain. He's just a generic villain, which is fair enough. Like maybe I was just reading into his acting too much early on. But that was a bit disappointing, I guess, to me, that he was so, I don't know. So he broke the deal that he made. I thought, okay, he at least still have some respect for like sticking to his word, you know? Anyway. Now I have a bunch of actual miscellaneous notes, so I'll fire through these. I said, boy, do I hate Marvel comedy, but boy, is it so much more tolerable not in a theater. So the worst thing for me, all my friends know this, I'm sure, I hate when I'm in the movie theater and other people laugh and it's just not a funny joke. I'm just like sitting there like, why are you laughing at this? I can't handle it. It makes me cringe and I just, oh God. So I'm glad to watch these movies. I love watching it on my own, you know, in the private home where no one else is laughing. There were little Infinity Stone people. I think at some point, like, something made me realize that they aren't Infinity Stone people. Maybe there was, like, a color that I hadn't seen before or something, but it was interesting. I wrote that Katie O'Brien is in this, and she is incredibly hot in this. I just thought I'd a random point, all right? So if you know who that is, you know who that is. An interesting idea that I thought of during this, watching this, and talking about how the quantum realm is like a realm inside the normal realm, is that what if we go in the other direction? Or even just like, my idea is basically, what if there's an infinite scale universes or multiverses? Like, we're talking about multiverses in that there's a universe and then there's another one next to it or whatever, and there's like an infinite number of those. But what if in a given universe, there are also infinite scale-wise multiverses, or like scale verses or something, where, for instance, we have the normal MCU world, and then we have, if you like zoom in enough, you get the quantum realm. And maybe again, if you zoom in even more, you'll get like a quantum realm, and maybe that goes down infinitely. And then maybe in the other direction as well. Like, you got the MCU, but then if you zoom out, maybe you got another MCU that is containing the MCU. And I think that would just be really interesting, you know? So I said, yeah, what's to say that the MCU is the base world? Maybe it's not. Maybe there's one bigger than it. I think it's just really interesting. I don't think there's anything to hint at that, but I think it would be really interesting to explore that idea. Okay. The Scott possibilities all working together to save Cass and like being like, oh, we have to save Cass. We have to get him up there, like lift him up. I thought that was really cool. At the end, when poor MODOK doesn't know what to do with his life, I like that. And then the post-credit scene, which is the background image here, is the best post-credit scene I've seen in any Marvel movie. I loved it so much. How you've got these three, like, seemingly leader Kangs, and then they're, like, summoning all these other like, basically every Kang in the universe, and all these Kangs are so different, and they're, like, some are cheering, and, like, it's, like, some of them are unhinged and all that. I thought that was really cool. And this is the kind of exploration of a multiverse that I was hoping to see in like Multiverse of Madness, or even in the main part of this movie that we haven't seen so far. Like, pushing it to its extreme, like getting a billion versions of one particular person. It's so interesting. And I was hoping by now the MCU would have explored something like this, but they haven't. So I was really glad to see it in this post-credit scene. But yeah, that's it. So I wrote that my final note is as like a summary. So generally, this was a pretty boring movie, but it was fine, with moments of like extreme frustration, but some cool moments. But no matter what, it's definitely a good-looking movie where both the visual effects and the directing are great generally. So that's my conclusion for Ant-Man. Now let me double check that I'm recording. That's always the... Oh, wait, am I unmuted? Oh, my goodness. Okay, perfect. Next up, Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 2. So this is a TV show, animated TV show. You probably can't tell from this beautifully rendered image here, but it's animated. 16 episodes, and I started watching it on the 1st of April and finished it on the 20th of April. So I watched this like after it had all finished airing so that I could just watch it all in one batch, you know? Funny, aren't I? Before overall thoughts, firstly, I knew some things before I watched this because my friend was trying to motivate me to watch it because, you know, I wasn't that motivated to watch this. So I knew that Palpatine was in it, and I knew that the Zillo Beast were in it. So these were two incredibly things that I was incredibly interested in. So I definitely watched it when I heard those two things. But generally, let me think. I think certainly this is better than Season 1 of The Bad Batch. I enjoyed this quite a bit. I think the highs of this are high. I think the finale felt a bit strange, like it ended suddenly, whereas the Season 1 finale, I thought that was really good with Camino and everything. But if we're just judging Season 2 on its own, let me think. It is interesting. When it comes to Star Wars, I am very much a Jedi fan, more than I am a Star Wars fan. When it comes to all the stories that are told in the Star Wars universe, I prefer the ones that center around Jedi. In the Clone Wars, I always preferred the Jedi episodes over the Clone episodes, except for Umbara, that was really good. So I think this extends to Bad Batch, where I enjoy this show quite a bit, but I don't feel an extreme love of it, like I do for, say, the Star Wars movies, or Clone Wars or Rebels in certain moments, you know? But I did thoroughly enjoy this season, I would say. We'll talk about it more. So I would give this a 3 out of 5. So, let's see. So I guess I've separated these notes into like, it's hard to talk about the season cohesively because Bad Batch tends to do standalone episodes and like a few different arcs as well. So I guess of the standalone episodes, there was the racing episode with like Tech, Wrecker, and Omega, who were like doing like a kind of pod racing kind of thing for for the winning Sid over because of the gambling. I loved that. That was probably the first episode this season where I was like, okay, I'm in. Like the first episode, I was like, okay, crabs and stuff. The second episode, I was like, okay, continuation from the first episode. But whenever this episode came out, I was like, oh hell yeah, this is great. I love them working together, doing this pod racing, cheering for Tech and all that. I really enjoyed that. And this entire season has been setting up Tech very well for his eventual demise. I don't know if he's actually dead, but they did a good job of setting that up, and I really liked that episode. We also get an episode about this like big ancient droid animal thing, which I thought was really cool. Like it's a really tantalizing mystery of like, did this thing destroy the planet? What is this thing? What is this like cube you put into, or what's even the word for that? Oblong shape? There's some word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. That goes in there, but like the first time you put it in, it powers it up, but the second time you put it in, it like melts and destroys the whole thing. Like, what's going on there? But yeah, I love it. And it's like not like anything we've seen in the Star Wars universe. Like similar to how the Zillo Beast is like whoa, what is this? This thing exists in the Star Wars universe. It's very similar. Like when this giant ancient world-destroying droid shows up, I'm like, holy, this is amazing. So I like that. We get a Wookiee Jedi episode or two, and he's the guy from the Clone Wars, like one of the younglings we see. So it was really cool to see him and see like kind of get in like hinting at the kind of journey he's taken since then. But man, was I so excited when a lightsaber showed up. I was like, oh hell yeah, Jedi! Finally, I love Jedi so much. That's the Star Wars I like. So I really enjoyed that episode as well. Or I think maybe those 2 episodes. I don't know. Then we get some episodes where they're trapped in a cave. Actually, we get 2 episodes. The first one I liked a lot. The second one I think is the worst episode of any Clone Wars or whatever I've ever seen. That was really boring. But yeah, the first one when they're trapped in the cave, we get Tech and Omega basically. That makes the episode really good, where they're fighting initially, and Omega, I think that's at the point at which she's sad that Echo's not around anymore because Echo left and Tech doesn't seem to care that much, so they have like a conflict there. But sorry. But then they have this really cute scene where they're talking to each other in like this crystal lit cave, and Tech talks about how like, oh, I don't understand, like I don't process emotions or whatever the same way, but I do feel things the same way. Or I do still feel things. And like Omega, like they have this meet cute, not meet cute, Jesus Christ. They have this cute conversation together. And I like that a lot. And absolutely not a meet cute, right? But the second part of that storyline, we get a really boring episode with Moko, apparently is his name, even though it sounds like Marco the way they say it. And this random like kid on a planet, and the Bad Batch basically not kills. Their actions lead to Moko's accidental death because he like plunges himself off the edge of this random like bridge, and that I imagine is going to plunge their entire society into chaos. Which is really funny and interesting. But the episode itself was pretty boring, but it was a pretty funny ending to a episode there. So other than these like standalone episodes, we also get a few Crosshair episodes. So he is obviously off on his own. And I thought these were really good. Maybe even the highlight of the season. I really enjoyed them. Oh, well, there's certainly one highlight of the season here with Palpatine, but I thought these were really good. We get a few of them here. We get Cody and the Separatists, basically, like where they're fighting the battle droids. And then we get the... Oh, I didn't write his name down, but we get this bearded clone commander guy on like an ice planet and him working with Crosshair together. And then we get Crosshair like imprisoned basically on that cloning planet. These were all really great. Whenever it goes to a Crosshair episode, I guess the tone becomes a lot more serious. And, you know, knowing me, or maybe you don't know, but I love serious things. I hate comedy and things usually, so I enjoyed those episodes quite a lot. Okay, and I have like a really specific note on Crosshair's episodes, which is that when he's like imprisoned by the cloning doctor, the cloning doctor's basically like, oh, we need you to tell us where Clone Force 99 is. And unless I'm forgetting something, I'm pretty sure that Crosshair pretended that like officially in the records and everything, he put down that Clone Force 99 was dead or whatever, that they got wiped out or something. So it was really interesting that he, in that moment, when asked about Clone Force 99, he didn't pretend that they were dead, because he knew that this doctor already knows that Clone Force 99 is out there. So he doesn't even say, like, he could have just mean something like, oh, what do you mean? They're dead. But we like skip that point, and Crosshair just like has like a mutual understanding with this guy that obviously they're alive. And I thought it was really cool how like he didn't deny that they're dead or alive. Small thing, but I thought that was really cool. Oh, and the scene with Crosshair, he's like chained to the bed or whatever, but he's not really chained. He gets out of it, he steals one of the guns and like shoots the 3 people like immediately. I thought that was really cool. Like, what a cool guy. But yeah, then we get like the actual big overarching story for this season, which is a bunch of cloning stuff mainly. So there's like the cloning conspiracy. No, yeah, the clone conspiracy is what it's called. Cloning the Zilla Beast, and then the Tarkin stuff at the end of the season. So this all ties together. So with the cloning conspiracy, I love that title. As soon as I saw it, I was like, ooh, this is a really interesting thing. But I guess we never resolved that clone conspiracy, because there was that guy that like killed himself by like chopping down or whatever. I don't think we ever resolved what happened with that, but I guess we'll see that one day. And it's a very general thing, but it was really cool to see Coruscant again and seeing the Senate. That's always just so cool to see it. It's like, it's kind of nostalgic, because I'm like, oh my god, the Senate, you know, that's where when I watched the prequels when I was like 10 years old or something. Oh my god. But it's really interesting to think that in a few years Palpatine is going to dissolve the Senate. It's like a crazy thing to think about, especially when you get to episode 4 and you hear that line from Tarkin, and it's like, the Emperor has done the final things of dissolving the Senate. And it's like, oh my god, that's the Senate we've seen in all this time, and it's gone now. It doesn't exist anymore. It was such a central piece of all of Star Wars, and it's gone. Anyway, really cool, random thing. Another really, this is an ironic kind of thing in this entire arc, which is that Palpatine and Tarkin and all that, they're all fighting for the decommissioning of the clones. They have a few reasons for it. I'm not going to go into that, but I think the interesting thing is that maybe if the clones weren't decommissioned, maybe they would have stopped the rebellion, because the way that the clones are portrayed in the Star Wars universe, they're portrayed as being way more competent than stormtroopers. So maybe the irony is that them decommissioning the clones and replacing them with stormtroopers for the sake of efficiency and control and controlling the citizens and all that, maybe it was the wrong step, and maybe keeping these really effective clones in power would have prevented the rebellion, because it would have been harder to fight against them. So I don't know. It's just a really, maybe that would have happened. Maybe it wouldn't have. An interesting thought that crossed my mind. I wrote that the blue senator is a baddie, which she is, absolutely. Rex showing up in this arc was really great. I didn't realize how much of a Rex fan I was until he showed up, and I was like, oh my god, that's Rex, I love him, he's in the Clone Wars, oh my god. Yeah, so that was funny to see my own emotions there at that point. There was an episode, the second part of this Palpatine episode was called Truth and Consequences, which I know this is like a reference to something, because I know in Doctor Who, there's a town in Mexico, I think, called Truth and Consequences, and like Doctor Who talked about it at some point, like in an episode. So I'm sure it's a reference to something, but I have no idea what that reference is. So maybe someone can let me know, but I got no idea. I guess I could Google it, but I won't because I'm a YouTuber and I get my audience to do things for me. What else? There's also relating to Doctor Who again. There was one shot in this. I don't think it was. Maybe it was. I think it was this two-part episode. There was a shot of a city that looked a lot like Skaro from Doctor Who. So yeah, interesting. Any of my Doctor Who heads out there? A little bit of a disappointment in this arc was how Senator Chuchi, I think was her name, the blue baddie, she was basically finding out that the Empire destroyed Kamino, and the Bad Batch like shows up and is like, okay, we're gonna help you, and they reveal that they were there on Kamino, but she doesn't have a reaction to it at all. I was hoping to see like, oh, what's she gonna do when she finds out that these heroes, you know, they were on Kamino that day? Like, would she be like, oh my god, you were on Kamino? But she doesn't bring it up at all, and I was like, oh, that's a bit disappointing. When I say on Kamino, like they were there the day it was destroyed. Anyway, or maybe she would be like, oh, I'm so sorry or something. She just didn't say anything. But why am I filling all this time? The grandest thing in this entire season, in all of the Bad Batch, and all of this like whole sequel part of Star Wars, because they always avoid showing Palpatine, but not this time. They brought him in, and I was so glad. Palpatine is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Star Wars character. I love seeing him. I guess he is the All-For One of this universe. I love it so much. But he basically reveals that he was going to win either way in this entire arc, where either the clones stay in power and no one finds out about what they did on Kamino, or people find out what happened on Kamino and he gets to implement the new Stormtrooper policy. So either way, he's going to win. So my first like random note on this, firstly, it's great. I loved it. It was so like, you get the energy. I'm engaged. Everyone goes quiet and you're like paying attention to every word he's saying. And this is Palpatine. It sounds like him. It's great. But what was interesting is that he has so many lines in this scene that are like obvious callbacks to previous lines he's had. Like he says like secure, and I don't know, like random things like that. And I'm like, oh wow, I wonder like what the idea behind this was. Like, are they trying to evoke this? Are they even potentially, maybe they didn't get the actor back and they are like merging different lines from the past to create new dialogue or something, like using AI? Like, I got no idea. But it was obvious that there were so many lines where I'm like, man, this is a clear reference to previous things. But yeah, I wrote, Palpatine is so cool. What an entrance. What a manipulator. Palpatine is the best part about Star Wars. He transcends Star Wars. So this is something I've talked about before, which maybe I'll make a video on this one day. But to me, there are things that transcend series. Things that are so good about a series or so interesting about a series that I think are worthy of discussion to anyone who is interested in the things that I'm interested in, I guess. And to me, Palpatine is one of those things. He's very interesting. The fact that he plays two sides of a war, you know, and when wins, the fact that he wins in this situation, he always has the upper hand. You think that Vader's killed him, but he hasn't, and he comes back. He's really interesting. He is something that transcends Star Wars, in my opinion. Then I made a random note that I'm sure is wrong, but I said, are stormtroopers named after the storm that wiped out Kamino? That would be really interesting. Like, I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever, because I think they were named stormtroopers before, like, the storm on Kamino happened that wiped out Kamino, but I think that would be really cool. Then at the end of this arc, Echo leaves to go and help Rex with all the clones that are going to be decommissioned now. But makes sense. Cool. Then we get another arc, which is the Zilla Beast. It is a standalone episode, but it ties in with this cloning thing or whatever because they're trying to clone the Zilla Beast. But goddamn, was I excited to see this thing. The Zilla Beast is one of my favorite things from the Clone Wars, just because of how like interesting the lore implications are. Like how there is this ancient like species that was living underground and being poisoned by gas, and the lightsabers can't even touch them, they're so powerful. And it makes me think, what was life like back then? Like what was the evolution of the Star Wars universe? Did these things come from beyond the galaxy or something? What are these things? Are there more of them out there, like on other planets? It's just, the Zilla Beast is so interesting. So what have I got? It wasn't immediately obvious that it was a Zilla Beast initially, because it's like you see a little tank and it's like, okay, how's a Zilla Beast going to fit in this? And then you see the creature and it like doesn't look like a Zilla Beast at all. It looks like a lizard or something. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I thought this would be the Zilla Beast episode, but I guess it's not. And then they reveal later when they're like, oh my god, this species grows when it touches when it consumes electricity. And you're like, no way, could it be? Could it be? And then you see the shot of the Zilla Beast and it is it. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm so hyped right now. But yeah, so it was interesting to get that. I don't remember this. Maybe they mentioned in the Clone Wars, but they say that when it like consumes energy, it gets larger. And to me, it makes me think, like, how large can it get? You know, like if you push it to the extreme, could it be as large as a planet? Could it be as large as the entire galaxy if you feed it so much energy? You know, that'd be crazy. Could there be, like, we have our galaxy, the Star Wars galaxy. Could there be a Zilla Beast out there in space that is as big as the galaxy, and one day it'll come and destroy the galaxy by accident just by passing through it? I don't know, ridiculous, but it's really interesting. Or could you go the other direction, suck out the energy, and make a tiny little baby Zilla Beast that you can have in your hand as like a pet? That'd be really cute. Like if the Empire wants funds, you know, maybe they could clone the Zilla Beast, make a bunch of little baby ones, and give them out to people to sell as like merchandise, and they'll become like really rich, and they won't need taxes anymore or something. I don't know, but I think that's a genius idea, right? What else? Yeah, could it be a celestial being? Maybe this thing. Maybe by default it is a god and it's the size of a galaxy, but over time it shrinks and it's no god no more. Anyway, that's the Zilla Beast. I love it. Then there's the final arc. So it's really interesting how we get the it's basically this fortified building where Tarkin and like 5 other people sit around the table. And to me, I assume this is like the 5 or 6 most important people in the entire galaxy, like besides the Emperor. So it was really tantalizing, I guess, because we know that there's Tarkin. Obviously, he's really important. We know there's Krennic there, which was really cool to see, and he's obviously very important. He's working on the Death Star. Then we've got the Doctor who's in charge of cloning, and we know how important cloning is, especially for bringing back Palpatine and all that. And then we've got 3 other people, and it's like, whoa, what do these 3 other people do? You know, how, like, if we have these 3 like massively important people, I wonder what these other 3 do. So it's really interesting. So what else? It's cool that they have the entire planet. Yeah, they basically locked off an entire planet just for this meeting between 6 people, which is really cool. If Krennic is, yeah, basically, yeah, that's my other point. All right. Then in a miscellaneous thing, but there was a really cool shot in the finale where the ship is coming to like shoot them down, and Hunter like gets his gun out and like shoots the ship in the correct thing and like blows it up, and I thought that was really cool. But what's really interesting about this season and this like final arc and episode in particular is that it's a complete failure. Like, Tech is dead. The tracker they put on the ship to like track them to the clone planet, that's lost. Omega is taken as well. Like, it's an absolute complete loss, which is something very rare for these like Clone Wars and this as well, and Rebels even. Really interesting. Then we get like I wrote this note when I was watching, but it's changed now with context. But I thought when I was watching, the saddest scene was when you've got Sid and Wrecker, where Wrecker is like refusing the free drink, and he's so sad, and Sid is like feeling bad for him because Tech is gone. And I was like, oh man, this sucks. But I guess later on you get revealed that Sid is feeling bad in that situation because she like called the Empire to come and hunt them down, so it like makes the scene a bit less than what I thought initially. Then I said, what a weird ending. Like, it's not really it is basically, it feels like a cliffhanger. Like, it feels like there should be one more episode after this. Like, it feels like a cliffhanger for an episode and not a season, you know? Like, it feels like they just suddenly decided to end the season in the middle of an arc for some reason. So I don't know why, but that's the impression I got. Then I have a bunch of miscellaneous notes. So Tech's femur was broken in like I never really explicitly said this, but Tech also dies, which is very sad. This season was basically a Tech season. Like she has a bunch of things. He flies in that pod racing thing. He has his conversations with Omega. He has a girlfriend basically on the ocean planet with the island. Like this is basically his season. And he dies in the end, and like he was slowly becoming my favorite of the Bad Batch, but you know he's gone now maybe. So I thought that was great. But yeah, early on, episode 1 or 2 or whatever, he breaks his femur, which is crazy. But he says that 150 kilograms of pressure broke the femur, which I thought was interesting because I don't know if they've ever used kilograms in the Star Wars universe. Like that's a really interesting choice of dialogue. Implies something about how they measure things, you know? Because they usually avoid like metrics like that. Like they won't be like, oh, in 10 days, they'll be like, oh, 10 rotations or something, you know? So it's interesting they use kilograms. Anyway, apparently some of these episodes came out in batches of 2. Yeah, which is this is according to Blind Wave reactions, because I watched the Blind Wave reactions. I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I don't have much to say beyond saying that was interesting. Another miscellaneous thing that I noticed was how last season it felt like Hunter was a very big deal. He felt like the father figure for Omega, you know? But this season it felt like he was hardly in it and hardly said or did anything at all. So, like, there were some points, like in certain arcs, you'd have a whole arc without him, and then the next episode he'd show up, and it would feel like he's like a distant stranger. Like he doesn't feel like a warm, loving character anymore. He just feels like a person that's there. So I thought that was really weird. Like they decided to focus on every other character except for him, you know? Strange. I don't know why. Like I was going to say, oh, maybe the actor wasn't available, but they're all voiced by the same guy, so I don't know. The ocean receding is terrifying. Yeah, so these island episodes, they were fine. They weren't the best, but they weren't bad or anything. But when the ocean recedes for the tsunami, I was like, God damn, that's terrifying. I did this once in VR where like it was a 3D 360 video where it's like a tsunami simulation, and it is like the terrifying thing was like the ocean going back, but also the ocean like slowly engulfing you, and like there's nothing you can do. Like the water just like slowly rises and rises and rises, and you get to the top of a building and you see all of these smaller buildings engulfed in water, and it's like, God damn, that's so deep. Like, what am I gonna... Anyway, I don't know, rant, there you go. VR's awesome. The mouse droid almost rats out Omega in the final episode, or second last episode. I thought that was really funny. We've never seen a mouse droid do anything, I don't think, except for in The Mandalorian, but I saw that after this. The characters having special abilities is really cool. Like, because obviously all of the Bad Batch, they have their like unique specialty. But I didn't realize how much I liked that until late in the season. Echo shows up back, like with the Bad Batch on their island planet. And I'm like, oh, why is Echo here? I guess he's here to like check in on them or get intel or something. But no, he's there because Tech is like a super tech genius, and he can decrypt the encrypted files that Echo got. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. He has like this superpower that Echo can leverage, you know? Neat. I never really appreciated their powers until that point, I guess. I guess you appreciate Wrecker's all the time because Wrecker's like the strength, and you can always use strength everywhere, but yeah, it was neat to see that here. And the final miscellaneous note is about how this season, the animation felt different. Like, I don't know if I'd say better or worse, but there were certain scenes, like the Senate scene, specifically when you're zooming in on Senator Chuchi, it looks like a tilt shift animation kind of thing. And their movement kind of looks a bit more like stop motion. It was just interesting to see. Like, it's not as fluid or anything. It's a distinct look. It's not better or worse or anything. It was just distinct, and I hadn't seen it before in this show. But that's it. Miscellaneous notes. The final thing I said is the Tech is obviously going to be back. We never saw him die. The Doctor retrieved his glasses, which means he has him captive for some reason. So I don't know where that story is going to go. I'm sure he'll come back at some point. But my friend suggested that maybe they'll clone him. And that could be really interesting. I don't know whether they'll clone him for good reasons, or like maybe either the bad people will clone him or the good, like Bad Batch will clone him. I got no idea what's going to happen, but no matter what, I think that's a really interesting idea. So that's the Bad Batch season 2. Next up. Okay, The Mandalorian season 3. So this is a TV show with only 8 episodes, and I started watching it on the 1st of March, so a long time ago, and I finished on the 23rd of April. So I watched like the first, I think maybe 3 episodes, I think, like week to week as they were coming out. And then I just like took a break and I was like, okay, let me just binge all these when I get to the end of the season. So overall, this was also a 3 out of 5 for Star Wars. So very similar to Bad Batch. I think generally I slightly preferred this over Bad Batch, but they're both quite similar, I would say, these seasons. So the overall thoughts, I think I have like 3 points here, which is firstly the Pirates and the Navarro storyline. I thought is cool. I'd say very bad, like very boring. I don't think I enjoyed anything from that storyline or planet. I would say the Mandalorian storyline with like Bo-Katan and the armor and all those Mandalorians. I think that's also generally pretty bad, and I wouldn't seek out that storyline. Like if it was completely out of this season, I would have liked it. Like I would have liked the season more, I guess. Like it had its moments. It's not as bad as the Pirates of Navarro, which had nothing. Like this definitely had its moments, particularly near the end. But generally, I just don't like that storyline. I'm not really interested in Mandalorians, ironically, for a Mandalorian show. But I would say the rest of the season was fantastic. It's just when I say it's fantastic, it's just such a small part of the season, which is fantastic. You know, the rest of it is the Mandalorian stuff and the pirate stuff. Like this episode here, look at it. Goddamn. Pershing and this Imperial are so great, you know? So anyway, so the first 2 episodes I said were not it. They were so boring. Seeing like Navarro and all that, catching up on that and seeing the pirates being introduced, I was like, oh, great, okay. And then Bo-Katan and Dinn going onto the surface of Mandalore and seeing the Mythosaur, I was like, oh, great, okay, whatever, I don't really care. I don't care about Mandalorian lore or anything. I'm not one of those guys. So those 2 episodes missed. But then we got the best, well, not the best actually, but a really good episode, which felt like an Andor episode for sure, which is like the day in the life of these Imperials who are in this like Reformation program where they get to live on Coruscant in these like little camps. I thought it was really cool. And Dr. Pershing is like showing his like cloning science and like all his research in this like presentation at the beginning, and then we get these 2 going out and going to a Star Destroyer or whatever. I don't know if it's a Star Destroyer. There's always these fancy terms for the ships. Like at some point that in the season they show like what I was like, okay, that's a Star Destroyer, right? And then the guy's like to the droid, that's not a Star Destroyer, that's like a Republic cruiser or something. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what the difference is. They all look the same. I'm not a ship guy, right, in Star Wars. Anyway, this was great. Seeing the everyday life on Coruscant, holding these, look at these glowing ice cream sticks. How cool. So I thought that was a great episode. And that like restored my faith. The first 2, I was like, okay, I'm scared. This is going to be a bad season. But this really restored my faith. Anyway. Yeah, this is something I've noticed, which is that The Mandalorian, the show, feels like it has a lot of fan service moments, and they always succeed, I think, except for maybe the Mythosaur one that I was just talking about. But that's mainly because I don't care about Mandalorians at all. But so there's the Dark Saber, I guess was the really big first one in the first season. We get Ahsoka, we get Boba Fett, we get Luke, we get the Order 66 flashback in this season, which I thought was really cool. And I wish that was like the whole episode or something. I really like that a lot. We get Zeb as well this season. And these things always hit. I'm always like, whenever I go to a new Mandalorian episode, I'm like, oh, is there going to be fan service in this one? I hope it's really cool. Like even here, like seeing Coruscant, I would say that's like fan service. Like it's really neat things like that. Yeah, now I have this other kind of miscellaneous thing where I'm talking about how when I think of the Mandalorian TV show, there's 2 things that stick out to me where I'm like, this is a good show. The first one was the 2nd episode of season 1 where Dinn is not fighting, but like basically going up against a Jawa sandcrawler. Like, so whenever I think of Mandalorian, that's like the first thing that goes in my mind. I'm like, that was a really good scene. And him like fighting the Mudhorn at the end. That's like peak Mandalorian quality for me. And the other thing I think about is the Ahsoka episode of season 2. And particularly the fight at the end with the magistrate. Like that's, let me think. I was going to say that's my favorite fight, but I think it's not my favorite fight in Star Wars. I think it's the the most visually interesting fight. Like the color scheme, like the not the color, what do you even call it? The color grading or something? Like the really green like atmosphere, the white lightsabers, the sound design, the quietness. There's no music playing. The idea of like who is this magistrate? Her like doing that thing with the spear and like making the vibration noise. It's just like a really interesting fight. So those are the two things I think of when I think of like Mandalorian. Firstly, when I think of Mandalorian at all, and also when someone asks me like, "What do you like about the Mandalorian?" Those are the two things that stick out to me. And this season, I guess, didn't really have an episode like that where I was like, "Man, that was so cool." But there is something we'll talk about which I really liked. Another kind of general Star Wars thing is that I love the prequels. All right, so when the sequel trilogy came out, and they avoided basically any reference to the prequels whatsoever, except I guess at one point they mentioned Sidious instead of saying like Palpatine, well, or something like that. They say something where I'm like, oh, that's from the prequels. At least they acknowledged it. The sequels was very prequel phobic. Like even they changed the capital, so it's not Coruscant anymore. So they make it Hosnian Prime or something. It's another planet basically. And it's like, why couldn't you just make it the Senate on Coruscant? You know. So that was very frustrating as a fan. Now, us prequel fans these days, we're eating very well, all right? We are getting a bunch of prequel stuff. Started with, obviously the Clone Wars came back and we got a bunch of prequel stuff there. We got Obi-Wan show. We got more Coruscant on Andor. Essentially, every show now will have some prequel reference in it. Even The Mandalorian, we get a bunch of prequel stuff in it. But the thing for me is that we've seen a few different perspectives of Order 66 now. Initially, the first time we see it, it's really interesting. I guess I should also mention Jedi Fallen Order. We get like a scene in there of Order 66. Yeah, the first time we see it, it's really cool. The second time we see it, it's also cool. But I kind of feel like it might be getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I think I've seen this enough. Like, it's kind of losing its novelty. Like, in this season, we see Grogu getting saved during Order 66 by Ahmed Best, I guess, as a Jedi, which was really interesting. But yeah, it wasn't as amazing as the first time I saw it. So I just wonder, like, are we going to keep getting Order 66 scenes? It kind of takes away from the interestingness of it, you know? But that's just like a very general thing. But on the other hand, I wrote that I'm glad that Star Wars isn't shying away from Coruscant anymore. So like they changed it to Hosnian Prime in the sequels, I'm just glad that we get to bask in Coruscant now, the beautiful planet of my nostalgic dreams when I watched the prequels, you know? So that was great. Another very interesting general kind of thing for this season is how it is a wild mystery to me, which I have labeled the Boba Fett conundrum, which I'm sure everyone is aware of this, like how they had season 2 and Grogu was like, okay, you're going with Luke, and he had this big moment. And then we have the Book of Boba Fett, and that basically deals with the entire storyline of like Luke and Grogu and Dinn and all that. And then we go to Mandalorian season 3, and it kind of doesn't address that at all, and it kind of assumes you've seen it, and it kind of treats it as the same show, you know, where it's like, this is assumed knowledge that you know what's happening here. And that was strange. I don't have any problem with the storyline. Like, I know a lot of people complain that, oh, Grogu's back, what's the point, you know, what that takes away from the emotion of the previous season's finale. And to me, it doesn't. Like, that didn't really bother me at all, because I liked how it was handled in the Book of Boba Fett. But it's just strange to have a requirement for you to watch another show to understand this show. And I don't think I would have as much of a problem if the shows were more similar. The Book of Boba Fett is a very different show where it felt very campy. I guess maybe it's similar in like it feels like a live action Star Wars thing, but the tone of it is very different to this show. Just like Andor is very different to the tone of this show. So it feels like when you're going from Mandalorian season 2 to the Book of Boba Fett, it feels like a bit of a discontinuation, as though you are watching a different show, because you are. And then you go to the season 3 of The Mandalorian, and again, it feels like a bit of a different tone to Book of Boba Fett. And it's a weird thing to kind of try and treat them as the same coherent story, you know? So I don't know, it's a weird thing. There's a cool scene where they're chasing a dragon to recover a foundling. I thought that was really engaging. And the reason I point out that scene is that I thought the visual effects there were insane. Like, to me, it just looked photoreal, where I was like, man, this dragon looks real, the flying looks real, the Mandalorians look real, it's insane. Like this show is a VFX like miracle. Like it just looks so good most of the time. Um, and I said the pirate storyline is boring as shit, and it certainly is. Um, I don't know if I like how they portrayed the New Republic as kind of hopeless and incompetent. Um, yeah, it kind of is like a very they're kind of boxed in by the sequel trilogy where they portrayed the New Republic as being kind of allowing the First Order to rise. So now you're kind of stuck with it, how you have to portray it that way in these things. So I don't really blame this, but it is kind of boring, I guess. Like it would have been more interesting to see a more competent New Republic. I don't know. Zeb, we got Zeb. That's great. Love it. I'm also kind of glad he wasn't like the focus. Like we just saw him a little bit and then he like went off screen and we never saw him again. But what we saw of him was cool. Like that's a kind of interesting way to integrate. Like you didn't have to have him there, but you did. And for some of us, it's like, wow, that's really cool. And the other people would just be like, oh, it's just a random guy. But anyway, that's fine. Yeah, just the pirate storyline. Like when the pirates were shooting in the city and then all the citizens ran away, there was like 30 people. Like, are we expected to believe that in this entire city there's only 30 people that are living here? And it's like, why? Like, it just seemed like the scale of it was a bit weird. I don't know. But enough of this nonsense, all right? We're going to talk about the best episode in this season of The Mandalorian. I loved it so much, which was the episode on that futuristic, like, utopian planet where they've got, like, universal basic income and they don't have to have the people working and all the droids are doing everything. I love that episode. It's even better. Like, initially, this was my favorite episode with the Dr. Pershing and, God, I don't know, Katie O'Brien is what I'll call her because she's so beautiful, you know, but I don't know what her actual Imperial name is, but I thought this episode was the best, but no, it wasn't. The Utopia was the best. So it's basically like this hyper modernized planet where they've got like hyper tubes all around the planet. And to me, it feels like a kind of mix between Doctor Who and Star Wars, where it's like these two series, like they have very different takes on science fiction. But in this episode, it kind of feel like they were melded together. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, generally, I guess I liked it because it felt like we're exploring the universe of Star Wars more than we usually do. Like, a lot of the planets we see are kind of similar, and this one felt very different and very modern. And this modern aspect is something, like, seeing stuff like, I think I've, like, pieced it together here. Seeing stuff like this, like a very modernized planet, which is very different to what modern was in the prequels, I think it would have been really interesting to see this kind of stuff be the dominant position of most planets in the galaxy in the sequels, you know? Like, seeing an evolved society rather than one that's stagnated, you know? So it was really interesting to see a society like this in this universe. Anyway, there was a really cool sequence in this episode with these, it's like a found footage, like security cam kind of thing of all these droids messing up, and like one crashes a car and one like has a bunch of knives and like is going like this and like almost killing people. I thought that was really cool. We get a super battle droid chase scene, which is really cool. Like it just shows how like threatening and dangerous these super battle droids are. Like, we never really see them next to normal people. Whenever we see them, it's like either next to clones in the Clone Wars, and also animated, so it feels a bit less real. Or we see them next to like Dooku or something. Or in the Battle of in the Battle of Geonosis, where it's like, okay, they're all just fighting Jedi. But now we see them around normal people, and they're like picking up like giant metal things from the ground and like throwing them, and it's like, damn, that could kill so many people, just this one droid, you know? So that was really cool to see. Just seeing them running, like we've never seen them running. Anyway, really cool. But wow, what I really enjoyed the speech of the droid in the droid bar in this episode, where he's like being thankful for the organics who created him. And the speech, I have it written here, the short part of it. He said, "We don't want to be replaced. We still have a lot to contribute. Human life is so short. They don't ask that much of us. Organics created us. It's the least we can do." It's a very interesting kind of subversion to what you're expecting in that scene, where you're expecting that all the terrible things that the humans have done to these droids, they're going to hate them for it, right? Like, they will resent the humans who make them suffer and treat them as slaves. But in reality, the droids are better people than the humans are. The droids are thankful for the creators that made them, you know? And they understand, like, they kind of, I really like the line of how, like, human life is so short, they don't ask that much of us. How it's like these droids will live on, and the humans in their short lives are making them do these things that seem so harsh, but to them, in the larger context of their life that will last for maybe thousands of years if they don't break down, these small things that the humans do, they don't see the bad. They kind of see they see them as an interesting creator, like who they respect. I don't know. It's there's some subtlety there which really resonates with me, but I probably can't really convey it that well. But I really like that speech. And then we get the reveal that this really cool old guy, which apparently is like a famous actor, is what I found out afterwards. I have no idea who he is, but apparently he's really famous. He like it's revealed that he's the bad guy basically, and he has this big political speech about like how he's pro-democracy and pro-Count Dooku. And then like Bo-Katan like stuns him and is like, oh, politics. And I'm like, oh, that's like such an Obi-Wan thing. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. Cool way to end the episode. How it's like this guy isn't evil. He like just has a political ideology that that he's like it's pro-democracy. It's just interesting. I thought it was really cool. All right. Let me drink more water. All right. So next up, the secret Imperial meeting was really interesting. I think this was the second last episode, so episode 7. It's basically Moff Gideon and Hux and like a few other people. They all come together and have this secret meeting. And I guess it gets revealed that they're searching for Grand Admiral Thrawn. So this basically confirms, at least to me, that this is what all the Filoni properties are leading up to, and eventually that's going to be the Filoni movie that he's going to have, and it'll center around Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I think that was confirmed, or maybe I think they confirmed that he would be in Ahsoka, right? So I'm fairly sure this is where this is all leading. But I thought that was really interesting, and it is a very interesting idea. I think that could be great. I am excited for these upcoming movies. Anyway, so Hux is working on Project Necromancer, and the thing is, I haven't, besides watching the Blind Wave reactions, I haven't looked at any discussions or anything. So maybe people have already come to conclusions. I'm sure people have already come to conclusions for this, but I'm not aware of it. But I also haven't seen the finale reaction to Blind Wave yet. So anyway, yeah, Hux is working on Project Necromancer. So I'm assuming that this is Palpatine's return, right? But then again, there's like no way that's the case, right? Because I don't think Hux knew about that in the sequels. I don't really remember what happened. I need to rewatch episode 9. I need to rewatch all of Star Wars, but it seems weird because I would have assumed that would have been a very tight circle who knew about the Final Order and like Palpatine's return. So it is interesting. And then I'm speculating on where could Thrawn possibly be. It's really interesting how, like both in Rebels, in last season, with Ahsoka and the Magistrate, and now with the Imperials, it seems like no one knows where Thrawn, and by extension Ezra as well, no one knows where they are. Which is interesting, because you figure someone would have some hint of, like, you'd be like, oh, we've heard rumors of this here and this here, but there's nothing. Everyone's like, he disappeared. So it just makes me think of, like, where could he possibly be? And a few things I've got is, like, could he be outside the galaxy? Because he got taken away by those hyperspace whales, and we have no idea where they went, and where those whales exist. Maybe they exist in a completely different galaxy. I said maybe he is held prisoner by the whales, like maybe he is like in a whale society or something, and like he's like grown to be part of their society. I got no idea. Maybe he's being held prisoner by some extragalactic species. Maybe that could be a thing. Or maybe, I don't know how it would tie in, but maybe this could tie into the Mortis trilogy stuff, like with the father-son and all that, and the world between worlds, where maybe the whales are tied into that somehow. Like, essentially, it's just so strange how there's no hint of where he could be. It makes it feel like he's not in the galaxy, is what it sounds like. So where could he be if he isn't in the galaxy? Maybe another galaxy, maybe some other spiritual realm, Anyway. Seeing all the Mandalorian ships arriving on Navarro was cool. Grogu's exoskeleton, that was really great and funny. I was like, yes, I love it. I guess initially when I saw it, I was like, okay, I don't like this. I like Grogu being Grogu, I want him to be this little cute little thing. But yeah, as soon as he got in, I'm like, this is fantastic. Pressing that button, awesome. Interesting Gideon thought I had, which is that to me it seems like Gideon thinks he's the best. Like, he is better than these, like, 5 other Imperials he was having a conversation with. He feels the most important, the most powerful. He has his own, like, weapons and all that. I wonder what he thought about Palpatine. Like, I wonder if he respected Palpatine, or if he also thought of Palpatine as a lesser, like he thought he was better than him. Like, it would be really interesting in like a prequel, whatever, like whether it be Bad Batch or something else, to see those two interact. I wonder what that kind of interaction would be, you know. Or how does he interact with Tarkin or something? Like, Gideon's a very interesting character, who we don't get to see interact with many people, unfortunately. Bo-Katan raises a very interesting idea, which is that Mandalore is too strong to defeat. How the Mandalore is always lost because it's their own division that divides them and destroys them, you know, which makes sense. Yeah, interesting. Oh, then I got very frustrated. So in the end, like the final few episodes, we have two factions of Mandalorians. We have like like Din Djarin Mandalorians with the armor and all that. And then we get the other Mandalorians with Bo-Katan and I don't know what his name is. The man. There's the one man, and then there's like some WWE wrestler person. They're on the other side. But god damn, did I get frustrated when they're having a chess match, and then the guy on the guy leader, who's like versing Pre Vizsla, he calls him a primitive. He's like, oh, these primitives, they make up their own rules, don't you? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's like the most insulting, like racist, like bully like behavior. And I'm like, Jesus, you want me to like why? And then they all laugh as well, like all the people on his side. I'm like, oh my god, I hate you. Like I hope you like I hope Paz Vizsla's side like wins in this conflict, you know, if you ever fight. Like, Jesus, I hate them. Like, before that, I was like neutral. I was like, okay, I understand why they think they're the Mandalorians. I understand why the other people think they're Mandalorians. I understand why they hate each other. But now I'm like, god damn, am I not on your side anymore? Anyway. Did he die? I hope he died. I don't remember. I don't think he did, but I don't like him. Okay. Then we get the Praetorian Guards come back, and they absolutely eviscerate Paz Vizsla. I thought that was really cool. And they had, like, pink weapons. I don't think it was like that in the episode 8. Maybe it was, and I just don't remember, but they were really cool. I don't know anything about their lore either. I just assume they're, like, really well-trained guards for the Emperor or something. I don't know. I wonder why Gideon didn't take. Oh yeah, so they captured Dinn basically at the final second last episode, and he's like, Gideon is like, oh yeah, disarm him or something, but they keep his helmet on. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't just take his helmet off at that point, you know, like then he's like completely vulnerable, and also Gideon would know that would be like he'd be disavowed from his order if he takes his helmet off. So I feel like Gideon has all the incentive to do it, but he doesn't do it for some reason. That felt like a very like obvious plot issue. Then I said it's so cool how the Mandalorians can fly into their ships with their jetpacks while in space. Yeah, I think one of the coolest like directing bits of these final few episodes was when the main guy who I hate, the racist guy, whatever, the bully, he's like flying using his jetpack all the way from the surface of Mandalore, through the really like rough atmosphere, like with all the rain and storming and everything, all the way into space, and then he flies directly into a ship, like through this like atmosphere field kind of thing. I thought that was so cool. Yep, what did I say? Flew all the way there. Yeah, I think it's like the cool aspect, like the things like that has been missing quite a lot from the Mandalorian so far up until this like final point. Like, I think they did a decent, like a really good job, I would say, in these final like 2 episodes of portraying the Mandalorians as cool by doing things like that, by having that really interesting land, like wind-based ship, basically, like. And those guys with the cloaks, those 3 like Mandalorians who like come down and they got cloaks and they take their helmets off and hold them next to each other, like cool things like that have been missing, that they kind of added at the end, where I was like, okay, I kind of like this. I see why people like the Mandalorians. Yeah. And goddamn, we got it both in Bad Batch and we got it here. The mouse droids make their triumphant entrance into the scene. So I've never seen them in anything else, but it was so great. They stumbled on like the droid that was trying to like activate all the doors for Dinn. They like circle him. They get like a bunch of all of these mouse droids, and they don't like. It's interesting in Bad Batch that one of them puts up an antenna, but in this one they get like 5 of them, and they like trying to intimidate the droid into like stopping. And then like the droid flies away, and one of them gets knocked off into the void and like dies. But yeah, that was really cool and cute. But it is also interesting. I wonder if the two teams working on, like the one on Bad Batch and the one on the Mandalorian, I wonder if they are completely independent in their writing somehow, even though I imagine Dave Filoni is involved in both, because they do have two very different interpretations of how the mouse droids work. Like one of them was the antenna, one of them was, oh, they just circle them around, you know? So that was really interesting. Like production kind of BTS kind of stuff. So Moff Gideon, his whole thing, it's revealed that he wants to clone himself so that he can have an army that uses the Force. An army of himself, I guess, that uses the Force. And what I took from this is that he truly, across all of these seasons, he has come across as a very, like, he's basically a little Star Wars fan, you know? He's like a fanboy. Like, he wants the Force. He wants his, like, little goofy darksaber that he does, like, a big pose at the end of season 1. He's wearing his really goofy, like, Mandalorian metal outfit at the end. He's, like, this really goofy Star Wars fanboy, which is really interesting for, like, a main villain of this series. I also do wonder how, now that he's dead, which who knows if he is, I wonder what the conflict will be for next season, if there is one. Like, what's going to be the overarching draw for the, like, the normie consumer who only cares about the overarching arc, you know? Who knows? What did I write? They did a great job of making the Praetorian, yeah, so the Praetorian guards crush Paz Vizsla, and then they fight again, but they fight Dinn and Grogu, basically, and they lose. And I thought they did a really, like, when I say they, I think the production did a really good job of making them believably lose against Grogu and Dinn. So there's like a mixture in that scene of like serious action and comedy. And I think they do a really good balance where like every time you see serious action where Dinn is like trying to do these really cool things, he loses. Like he's doing bad. Whereas usually serious action would be like the protagonist is doing something really cool, but he's losing in that situation. But every time there's comedy, which is Grogu like using the Force to like pull them back or like push Dinn out of the way, they're winning. The Praetorians are losing and Grogu is winning. I don't know. It was a really interesting balance there where it felt believable that like this balance of like action and comedy would lead to the good guys winning in that situation against these like insurmountable enemies that they're facing. So yeah, anyway. Then Grogu has this big Dumbledore moment with the flames. I thought that was cool. I think it was cool, but it was like a bit too much emphasis was placed on it where I'm like, okay, this is a cool visual, but like we're focusing on this quite a bit. But I liked it. Then we surprisingly get a very happy ending. Wrap up to this season where like you've got Grogu and Dinn just living at a house, and I think Grogu's like eating dinner or something, and Dinn's got his legs up on the chair basically. And then it like zooms in with this like circle and crops in on them, and it's like, oh, that's the end, like a happy ending. I thought that was really cute. I like that a lot. Probably the best use of like the transition thing that I've seen in Star Wars. Then I have one note here. I said, I'm really looking forward to next season. Oh, now that the Mandalorian plotline is done. Yeah, so I'm done. I have no interest anymore. We've done it. We've done all the Mandalorian stuff. Let's just have some nice adventures with Din and Grogu, you know? Giving him his foundling experiences or whatever. Love it. So that's it. Mandalorian, Season 3. Next up, Deadman's Questions. So this is a manga. It has 3 chapters, and I read it on the 24th of April. So this was recommended by Miller the Killer in last month's digest comments. So that could be you next time, alright guys, if you leave a comment on something for me to consume. But, I don't know if you can hear the sirens. There's a lot of sirens going on right now. Let's wait. Alright, so before I talk about this, I want to give a spoiler warning. So if you are remotely interested in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, then I would recommend reading this. It's 3 chapters, so go ahead and read it. And don't listen to this until you've read it, because there is some spoilers, some plot-like things that get revealed that I'm like, I don't want to ruin this for anyone. Like, it was really fun experiencing it, so go watch that. But overall, this is a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed this quite a lot. My history with JoJo's is that I don't have much of a history. I guess I watched the anime. I love the anime. It's quite great. I've only watched part 1 of part 6. I want to watch the rest of it. I think I'll probably do that next month. We'll see. Maybe the month after. But yeah, I love it. Part 4 is great. I think the characters of that are great. And it was unbelievable and shocking to see Kira come back in this. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely shocked. I knew nothing going into this, basically. When I Googled it to find it, and I read the first thing. I was like, okay, so clearly this is JoJo's. It looks just like JoJo's, so that's the first thing I picked up. But yeah, other than that, I knew nothing. And it was also kind of a struggle to actually read this without finding anything out, because firstly I went to a website and I read like the first page, and then it's like, oh, this is part 1. And part 1 has 3 chapters. And I was like, huh, what does that mean? Is it like a part 2 I need to look up? But I can't look it up, because I'm like, if I look it up, then I'll find out information about it. So I had no idea. And then also I found like 2 websites with 2 different translations. And I was like, oh God, what do I do? How do I find out what's the official translation without looking it up? Because I wanted to like consume this without knowing anything. So I just like compared the 2 and I was like, okay, which one sounds better? And one of them did. So I was like, okay, I'll stick with this. And I'm fairly sure like afterwards I'm pretty sure it was the better like the official translation. I don't know if there is an official translation, but it sounded really good by the end. So I'm happy with that. So let me see. So, yes. So I said, so we're seeing the world from the, oh yeah. So generally the idea of this story is that we see the world of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but we're seeing it from the perspective of the spirits who, exist in this world in addition to the humans, but the humans can't see them. So they can interact with humans, and the humans can kind of interact with them accidentally, but they can't see them. And that was really interesting. And it's like, basically the spirits are like, after, I assume, because it's the case with Kira, after they die, they come back here for some reason. We'll talk about that actually a little bit. So what is it? Yeah, they get blown around by the wind and can only enter rooms if the person in the room gives them permission. It's a very interesting, like JoJo kind of story. Like it's a bit wacky. It's funny at times, but it also takes itself seriously. Well, I don't think it takes itself seriously, but the character takes himself seriously, which is interesting. So yeah, it's very, very JoJo's, I would say. And it's also a very like a detective film, like film noir kind of vibe. You get like Kira is like narrating the things he's doing and talking about it like in the third perspective, like, oh, I did this here and I walked down the station and it was blah 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 AM and PM and I don't know, interesting stuff like that. So I like the framing. So another thing I realized was that there's a series of reveals that happen in this where it makes me go, huh, that earlier scene makes sense now with context. So the first reveal is that you find out that the main character you're following is dead. And then I'm like, oh, I guess that's why the person on the train couldn't see him. And that's why like he's right behind him following him and no one actually notices him. And then he gets the reveal that, oh, if his spirit touches, oh no, if other people touch his spirit, then the spirit could potentially be harmed. And it's like, oh, so that's why before he mentioned that I make sure that people didn't bump into me. I'm like, oh, okay, makes sense. And then you get obviously the big reveal where it's like his name, Yoshikage Kira or whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, that's Kira from part 4. It's the villain. Oh my god. So yeah, I guess that doesn't really reframe anything besides just like recontextualizing the whole story to be like, oh my god, you're following the villain from part 4 after his death. Which is interesting because it's like an interesting lore implication because at least from what I remember, Kira got he got crushed by an ambulance, but then he literally got sent to hell by these things that were like these arms in the sky that were like grabbing people. So the interesting lore implication is that like if you get sucked in there, then you'll get sent into an eternity on Earth where you can't die, so you're just stuck there forever. So it's like, wow, that's interesting, an interesting punishment for hell. So yep. And the interesting thing is that he's not doing anything evil. He's not like creeping on people's hands or anything anymore. He's just looking for a place to stay so that he can just have a normal existence, which is funny. Cool, really cool. Really JoJo's, I guess. Oh, and then I guess another reveal is that he's still in the Morio district. I don't really know what the distinction is, but I know Morio was the town that part 4 was in. And I know at some point here they mentioned the Morio district, but I'm sure they're different things, but yeah, it was interesting to see that he was in Morio. I'm like, of course he is, that's where he died. I don't have many more notes, actually, but a random note from the end of this is that he finds these monsters that he thinks are cleansers that like remove souls of the dead, like, and he says that this is like a thing that happens in all of the universes. There's always organisms that remove dead bodies and other things like that. And I like that. It's a really cool idea. But I think what's really funny is that he is probably misinterpreting the situation. Like, he jumps to such a rapid conclusion and thinks it's so confident. And it's such like I don't know how to explain it besides saying it's such like a JoJo's character kind of thing, where it's like a bizarre situation that he just accepts willingly and is like, that's his worldview now. These things are obviously the cleansers that remove the souls of blah blah blah. And I'm like, wow, is it that obvious? I find it really, it's just funny. But yeah, anyway, he loses an arm, but then he keeps on living life. You know, interesting. But yeah, then I just have a bunch of miscellaneous notes. So the art in this is great. Like, it's very detailed and intricate, but it's very hard to follow sometimes. Like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of like speech bubbles as well that sometimes obscure things. It's very hard to follow at times, I would say. The other thing is that there's 3 chapters here, and the first one is definitely my favorite, with all the reveals and like trying to understand the situation he's in and all that, and him like trying to solve the, not solve, but trying to contact the person that is in charge of the case of this dead person, this murder mystery that expires soon. Interesting. Second part is very strange. It's like a bunch of exposition basically, which is interesting for such a short story. You know, like you'd feel like you wouldn't waste time kind of explaining stuff like that. And then you get the third part, which is more goofy, like going into a house and finding eggs and seeing these creatures. Really wacky. I like that. So yeah, very interesting how there were 3 distinct kind of elements in this very short story. Another really interesting thing is that there's gray people in the backgrounds of scenes. So instead of drawing like background characters, he like draws these like silhouetted gray people, which is something that I noticed. Oh, not I know, it's obvious. In part 6 that they have. That's basically how all the background characters are drawn, and that's not something that they've ever done. Oh, sorry. When I say that, I mean in the anime that I've seen. That was not done at all for any of the other anime parts. Like, there were actual background characters in like part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I wonder if that's like a thing that happens throughout the entire manga, and maybe the anime didn't adapt it until they got to part 6, or if it is like a part 6 thing, and this kind of implies that this was published after part 6, if that's the case. So I don't know. And this is a very miscellaneous note, but in part 1 he like leaves the station and there's a flower shop there. And my question is, why is there always a flower shop at the exit of a train station? So in my experience, there always is one. Like in Australia, in Canada, and in America, I've noticed that there are flower shops in every train station that I leave. So I wonder why that's the case. Maybe because people like travel to meet loved ones or something, and it's a frequent thing, so they have to get flowers to show. I got no idea. And then at the end of this story, you get this author's note where he says, the idea was a man who... Oh, this isn't a quote. I don't know why I'm reading it as a note. Quote. The idea was a man who died... The idea behind, basically... Let me rephrase this instead of reading it. The idea of this whole story is to convey the idea... Like, to convey a story of a man who keeps on living after he dies, but he doesn't, like, do ghost things or any... Like, he doesn't want to be a superhero or anything. He just wants to live a normal life on Earth, but just having to abide by, like, different rules. Which is really cool. That's why I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's just an enjoyable kind of random story with a character that I know, that's in a very different context to what I know, in a world that I enjoy, written by an author that I like, with a vibe that is very familiar. Getting a 4 out of 5. So there we go. Deadman's questions. Okay. Next up, Mignonnes. Okay. This is a French movie. It's an hour and 35 minutes long, and I watched it on the 24th of April, and you might know it as a movie called Cuties, which is a very controversial movie. This was recommended to me by Miller the Killer. I imagine he did this as a meme. I don't know if he expected me to actually watch this, but I did. And I called it this, to, surprise everyone, because, anyway. So if you aren't familiar, this is a very controversial movie. You can look it up, like type in Cuties YouTube review or something, and you'll probably see a million people arguing about it, if it should exist or if it should be banned from the internet or whatever. I don't know. But it was on Netflix, so I'm like, if it's on Netflix, it can't be that like terrible. So I watched it. And my takeaway, I have a bunch, like I've got a bunch written here. So my main takeaway is that it was it's a 2 out of 5. Generally it was just a very boring movie, I guess I would say. Like, it didn't really click with me. I didn't emotionally resonate with me at all. It was just quite boring, I guess. So let me go through my notes. I said initially, So I've obviously heard the massive backlash to this. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people are like truly really hate this movie. But initially when I was watching this, I was like, okay, so I thought people were overreacting because it doesn't start off that bad. But as the movie goes on, I definitely understood why people were so like viscerally affected by this. And because it has some very uncomfortable scenes. But I guess the distinction is that the reason I don't hate it for that is that these scenes are clearly meant to be uncomfortable. Like they're meant to show you how bad this stuff is. So yeah, anyway. Then I guess the reason this movie completely failed for me was how when it gets to the climax of this movie, like the emotional climax or whatever, I felt nothing whatsoever. Like it didn't strike me as like, oh, I understand what this movie is trying to convey or anything. It just fell flat. So I've like written, let me read this out. So she's doing her dance routine basically at the climax. And out of nowhere she starts crying. Which is understandable. Like I get what the movie is trying to convey. Like this is terrible and like she should try and like strike a balance, between conservatism and progressivism or whatever. But there's nothing that during that dance, there's nothing that really triggers it or feels like it's there's some like something happens there that there's a reason for there to be an emotional climax there. Like it feels like it comes out of nowhere. So I said, yeah, there's nothing that triggers her breakdown compared to any other of the the visceral, like terrible dancing scenes throughout the movie. It feels like she's been reaching a breaking point, but it just she happens to reach that breaking point randomly out of nowhere, and it's kind of like why now? Why not all the other times? All these other bullying incidents, all these other like terrible things that have happened. Like why now? So I was just so I'm just stuck there thinking, like, what is the movie trying to convey right now? Like, why is she breaking down now? I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. And then she runs home to her mum, and the mum is like suddenly feels like a completely different character. Like she's suddenly open-minded and accepting of her, whereas in the rest of the movie she's like very distant, and it feels like she's not really there for her daughter or anything. But now she is, and it's like out of nowhere. I'm like, what's happening? So then, what did I say? I said it just didn't resonate with me emotionally whatsoever. The final scene is also really goofy. Now I don't hate it because it's goofy. What it is that she like goes home and her mum's like, oh, don't worry, you don't have to go to the wedding, you don't have to do the dancing stuff or whatever. Just you can choose what you want to do. And she finally feels free, and she goes and does skipping, and she like jumps in the air really high, and she's like smiling or whatever. And intellectually, like I understand what they're going for. Like they're trying to say, okay, this girl feels free now, and she's finally happy for the first time in her life because she can choose her own path in life, and she doesn't have to conform to these two extremes, right? But the issue is that I don't feel anything emotionally because the climax just didn't work for me. So I don't know. Basically, I'm not going to rewatch this, but maybe I need to rewatch it to kind of understand the point of it. But like, I guess the thing is, I do understand the point of it. It just doesn't reach me emotionally. So I don't know. That's my takeaway for this movie. However, I do like the traditional Muslim marriage subplot, I guess, in this movie. I thought that was really interesting because I've never experienced that. I don't know much about it. But basically, Amy's dad is getting a second wife, and that's like it comes out of nowhere, and it kind of like, it's like, wow, I can't believe there's places like that in the world where it's like a woman can be socially pressured into taking on a second wife for her husband. Like, for example, this scene here I really enjoyed. Like, it's probably my favorite scene in the movie, where Amy like opens her parents' bedroom, and she sees this woman like covered in complete white, and her face even covered, and she kind of looks like a ghost. Like, it's really scary. And that's like the second wife of her dad. And it's like this is what, like, she realizes this is who I'm going to be if I stay in this path. And it like pushes her completely in the other direction as well, which is equally as bad, or to her perspective, I guess, to frame her as a person, it's equally stressful. So, and it's also, I guess, it also resonates because previously in a previous scene, her like grandmother or aunt or something told her how like, oh, when I was your age, in a few years, I became this wife. Like, I became this white-gowned person, basically. And I'm like, man, Jesus. Anyway, but yeah, so I thought what was really interesting by the end of this movie is that going into it, like at the beginning of it, I was kind of expecting it to be a very pro traditionalism and pro like Islam kind of movie, but it's obviously not. It like the as far as I understand, from what I gathered, my interpretation is that the message of the movie is like you should be able to choose your life and you shouldn't be forced into the two extremes. And it was really interesting. It was very refreshing to not get like a pro-progressivism or a very pro-Islam traditionalism kind of movie. I wasn't expecting it, and that kind of probably bumped it up from a 1 to a 2, where I was like, huh, I guess it is. It's trying to say something interesting, I guess, at least. So that's that. So I have a few miscellaneous notes. So I said, Jesus Christ, there was a scene early on where the girl is ironing her hair with a clothes iron. Like, Jesus, isn't that gonna like start a fire or something? I don't know. Scary. Then I said, Jesus Christ, I hate kids. They're so annoying. True. Said, Jesus, the woman dressed in white is terrifying. True. Then I said, I said, I can't handle these cringe bullying scenes. So there's a bunch of like scenes where Amy is being bullied by all these kids at school. And I'm just like, if I was in this position, I would be like rhetorically crushing these bullies, right? I'd be bullying them with my insults, and I'd verbally abuse them so bad that they'd be scarred forever or something, you know? But she's like very, she's not confident. She doesn't try and get them back with her words or anything, but it's so frustrating. Anyway, that's Mignonnes, an hour and 35 minutes. Next up, we have Gone Home. This is a game, it took me 2.5 hours to beat. If you play this game, it'll probably also take you 2.5 hours to beat. And I played it from the 25th to the 26th of April. And this was recommended by Kyle Entertainment in the last digest video comments. So, overall, this was a 4 out of 5. So, well, it's a 4 out of 5, bordering on a 3 out of 5, all right? We'll talk about it. But I knew absolutely nothing. What I knew was that this was a... there's not like gameplay in this. It's mainly like a point and click kind of walk around kind of thing. That's what Kyle told me. But I didn't know if it was a horror game, a science fiction game, like a mystery game. I got no idea. So when I was playing this, I was constantly on the edge of my seat thinking it actually was a horror game, because that's the vibe you get from it. Which is waiting for a jump scare that never came. So yeah, that was... I don't really play horror games, so this was the closest thing I guess I've gotten for a while. But that was, I guess, my first impression. But I guess let me think overall. I think it's fun. Like I give it a 4 out of 5 because, I mean, there's a specific plot reason, but exploring this house is very similar to how, like, how do I express this? I love Stray. Okay, Stray is a 5 out of 5. It's I think it was the second favorite thing this year, or maybe third favorite or something so far. And I enjoy it because you feel like you understand the environment that you live in. You get a familiar connection with all of these people around you. You love the city. I fall in love with the city that I'm in, and it feels like it's my home. So when I have to move on, it feels different and sad and all that. I get a very similar, but like very weaker, much weaker than Stray vibe here, where I'm like, oh, this is my house. And since I've spent 2.5 hours just around this little house, I feel like I'm a part of it. Like I understand it. Like it's my house. Like I connect with it, you know? Like I understand all the little notes and little objects in people's rooms and the way things are structured and all that. I kind of feel a connection to that. And it feels like, say, a year from now, I'll probably feel nostalgic for this game, because I'll be like, man, that's the house that I spent so long just exploring and seeing the little characteristics of the house and all that. So I guess that's why I really like this game generally. But yeah, let's go into some notes. So as soon as the game opens, you get a letter from Sam. And immediately I was like, oh, I figured out this game. Because Sam's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not there. I wish I could have seen you or whatever. And I'm like, oh, so he committed suicide. And I say he because initially I thought Sam was a brother. Because I'm like, oh, Sam, gender neutral name. But in my mind, I was like, Sam, that's a man's name, obviously. But I was like, yeah, so obviously Sam's committed suicide. We'll probably find out at the end of the game. Obvious. Anyway, that was my first impression there. Miscellaneous note. I think it's kind of... like throughout the game, there's like family portraits and stuff. But the funny thing is that when you open the portrait and look at it in detail, it's literally real life pictures of people, which is very jarring because the game is not photorealistic. It's like in a slightly like weird, like it looks kind of real, but it's definitely not real. So seeing real people's photos, it like takes me out of it. I'm like, this is really weird. That's not what I imagined the characters in the world look like. I imagine them being more like abstract a little bit, you know. Anyway, that was kind of weird. I guess a bunch of these are just miscellaneous notes, but you see a bunch of notes that are written around the house, mainly from Samantha, I guess I would assume her name is. But I wonder if Sam has a learning disability, because some of these notes feel like they were written by a child. So it's either that, or maybe they literally are notes when she was a child. But it sounds like to me that she is a 17-year-old girl and she moved into this house recently. So I don't know what's happening. So I don't know. And also the voice notes you hear from her don't sound like she has any like mental issues or anything. So I don't know. Then I think I kind of failed at the there's so much information, like reading all these documents and stuff. I skipped a lot of them because I'm like, I can't read all this. But from what I gathered, the mum is like a spiritual, religious, like environmental person or something, and I think the dad is a failed author, is what I gathered. And I think there's also some uncle or something, but I did not get any coherent story for him. Miscellaneous note, there's an autostereogram. I actually looked up that word in Sam's room, which I thought was really cool. And I was like, oh, I know what this is. I don't have to look this up. I can just do the thing where you cross your eyes. Oh, can you hear those sirens? Oh my god. It's those 3D cross-eyed things where it's like, it looks like a random pattern, but if you like cross your eyes a little bit or put it close to your face, it like reveals like a heart or a shark or something. But that was cool. Yeah, so throughout this game, you see this attic that's this picture here, and the whole time I'm like, okay, there's going to be a dead body in this attic. She's probably, my sister's probably dead up there, whatever. What other miscellaneous things did I find around the house? Sam writes stories about Captain Allegra, like this female pirate who goes around doing things. That was cute. And I think I have a rough idea of when this game came out, but I wrote that I wonder when it came out because Sam is gay in this movie, and they make a big deal out of it. And to me, that feels like a very old kind of thing to do, where it's like making a big deal out of this would not be a very progressive thing to do these days. It should just be a thing that happens naturally. So I wonder if this was like, what, 2015 or something, when that was kind of the thing to do. So that was interesting. At some point you get introduced to Lonnie, who is like who is the main driving like force behind Sam's life, I guess. But initially you have no context. So for me, it's kind of like, I don't know if this is a horror game. I don't know what this is. So I thought that maybe Sam was Lonnie's stalker or something. So Lonnie is like this person that Sam is stalking, and Lonnie doesn't know about Sam, and Sam is like writing all these letters about her and pretending that she talks to her, but maybe she doesn't know her at all. But no, that wasn't the case at all. Unless it is, and there's some interpretation of the game where maybe that is true. I don't know. That's a good point. Thank you, Ari. Very genius. Sam's story is basically she's a gay woman who's living in a traditional household who thinks that they can pray the gay away, or like as long as you don't embrace it, maybe it'll go away eventually. You'll grow out of this phase, all right? So that's a sad kind of thing. I do like how you get all this subtle storytelling through notes and stuff. I haven't played The Last of Us, but I hear that that's a thing that The Last of Us does very well, and I'm sure many other games do it too, but this game does it really interestingly. Then you get some lore drops that apparently Sam initially had a friend called Daniel who was a bit weird, but she replaced him with Lonnie, and I'm like, oh man, poor Daniel, God. It's funny. Then I said that there's a bunch of notes around the house, and there's no chronological way to explore the house beyond like if maybe there's like 2 locked doors where you have to find keys first, but I didn't read any of these notes chronologically, I'm fairly sure. So like, especially the audio notes, like when you're picking up some notes, they'll read out the audio for like some background that Sam recorded. And I certainly did not do that first. Like I think I got like right. Basically, she had like well established her relationship with Lonnie in the first note that I read, and I think like the second last note I read was her meeting Lonnie, so it was like completely out of order, all of those notes, which made it hard to like keep a coherent story of what's going on. But I kind of thought it was cool. I think I would have preferred if I had like interacted with them chronologically, but it is what it is. Yeah, for instance, I accidentally found the second last note, which was in pitch darkness. So I don't think I was meant to get it, but I accidentally clicked somewhere, and it like opened up a secret panel, and I like got the note. It's like, oh no, I got the second last note here by accident. Then I said, if I was Sam, I'd be pissed that Lonnie is like choosing a job over love. But yeah, that Dorian, that didn't happen in the end. Then, from a game perspective, I got to a point, maybe like, I don't know, an hour and a half in, 2 hours in, something like that, where I had no idea what I had to do. I'm like, obviously I have to get to the attic. That's like, that has to be the end goal, because there's like glowing lights, and it seems like it says don't enter when the lights are red or whatever. Clearly that's the end goal here. But I had no idea what to do. I feel like I'd explored everything and done all this stuff, and I had no idea that I was meant to be collecting these audio notes or anything. So I decided I was going to go through the entire house systematically. Like, I would go room by room and pick up every single object and drop it on the floor so I know that I've interacted with it. And then close it all behind me in like a breadth first search where I would like know that, okay, this place has been explored because this door is closed, and I'd like continue doing that. So I actually did that for the entire house, and interacted with every single object that I could find. And then eventually I did that, and I unlocked every single note except for one of them, and I had to look it up because I was like, God damn, I've spent so long doing this in every room, and I couldn't figure it out. So then I looked it up, and luckily there were no spoilers or anything when I looked it up. All I saw was like, it was a very short thing of like, you need to collect the notes. Here's the rooms where the notes are, and it was like greenhouse or something. I was like, okay, I know where that is. Let me go there. So I was glad that having to look it up wasn't too much of a spoiler, but I did feel like I was stuck at a certain point because I did do a very systematic search, but there's so many objects. I guess I just missed one little object, but yeah. Another interesting like game design kind of thing is that there's a bunch of locked lockers or like file cabinets, which I cannot for the life of me even imagine how you could unlock those. Like, would you have to brute force? But yeah, I guess my question is like, is it just a world building thing where it's like, oh, there's lockers here, you can't open them, but it's interesting that there's lockers and stuff, or is there actually a way to decode it in the game and I just had no idea? But anyway, another thing is that the game is very dark. My monitor firstly sucks at showing dark things, so I always have to turn the brightness up for certain things, but for this one I wasn't sure how much I meant to turn it up, because like, I figured it was a horror game, and I'm like, okay, if I turn it up too much, maybe it'll ruin the atmosphere. So I turned it up a little bit, but it was hard to see certain things. So maybe it was meant to be an easier game where I like turn the brightness up completely, but I don't know. Oh, okay. Look, I even wrote down why I messed up, like why I couldn't finish it. So I said, I've explored the entire house and now I have no idea what to do. I looked up a guide and it says to go back to the greenhouse for another secret passage. And then I said, is this the note that Sam and Lonnie had while the note was being read? It must have distracted me. So I remember that I picked up one note and he was reading it out to me. And then I picked up another note and it didn't read it out to me. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this isn't the note. But the second time I picked it up, it did read it out to me. So I was like, oh, the issue was that I think I was reading 2 notes too quickly or something. I don't know. But something like that was the issue, I think. Yeah, then I basically you read all the notes, then you get to the end of the game. And I was standing at the bottom of these stairs and I was like, there is a dead body up there. There has to be. Like the sad, like her final note is about how Lonnie is leaving and she's so sad and all that. And I'm going to go to the attic and sleep or whatever. And I was just like, when I'm at the bottom of these stairs and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to find like my sister who is malnourished and basically she's dead. And I was legitimately nervous. Like the game did get to me emotionally with all those notes and the final note. And I'm standing at the bottom of these stairs. I'm like, I don't want to go up there because I'm going to see my dead malnourished sister up there who killed herself. But then you get the actual twist, which is what makes this from a 3 out of 5 to a 4 out of 5, which is that I truly was expecting to see my dead sister up in the attic. And everything in the game, in my opinion, like the dark atmosphere, the big empty house, the satanic like ghost references, the creepy uncle, what else? The Sam's sad audio tracks about Lonnie leaving. This is all leading you toward the obvious conclusion of a tragic ending to Sam's like life with a suicide, right? But it turns out that it's a complete happy ending. And that saves the game for me. It's amazing. Like I didn't quite tear up or anything, so I wouldn't give this like a 5 out of 5 or anything, but I certainly did feel like strong emotions here where not even because I guess the message of the story, like I took a different thing from the story, which is that I feel like the game's trying to make you feel happy for the fact that Sam and Lonnie are together in the end. and it's like, oh, finally these two women who are defying gender, or not gender, or societal expectations at the time, they finally get to be happy together. But I don't care about that at all. That's fine, whatever. To me, I'm like, I'm so glad that my sister Sam has her entire life ahead of her. Like she hasn't died. She has all this possibility in her life that she can still be happy and explore. And I'm just happy that she's alive. And that's what gets to me emotionally, rather than this relationship stuff. But yeah, so I thought that was really good. So yeah, my final note is it's probably a 3 out of 5, but the ending is interesting enough and got to me emotionally enough that I'd give it a 4 out of 5. So that's Gone Home. All right, next up, Lackadaisy, pilot. So I think I pronounced that right, Lackadaisy. This is a short film, very, very short, 27 minutes long. It's on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it for free. And I watched it 30th of April, so I watched it today. So this was recommended by Jarky Bacon. And he wasn't sure if I should put this on my media list or my YouTube list that I'll go over soon. But I figured it's very high production. It's a self-contained thing. I figured it's almost like it very much fits on a media list. I don't have too many notes for this, actually. It's a very short, self-contained kind of thing that I don't have too much context for. But overall, I thought the production elements were fantastic. You can probably see from this screenshot, it's really good. Or it looks like pretty good, I guess. I thought the story was engaging. Like, I was engaged throughout the whole thing. And I would probably watch more of this if there was more to come out. But I don't really care at all if more comes out. Like, if nothing ever comes out, I don't think I'm ever going to think about this unless someone tells me, oh, episode 2 came out. And I'd be like, oh, I guess I'm mildly interested to watch it. So it gets a 3 out of 5. So yeah, let me see what notes I actually have on this. Oh, this is it's not very specific to this, but the film starts with a content warning for gun violence and alcohol consumption. And to me, this is like, I've never understood this. It seems so ridiculous. Like, it's so arbitrary, basically, to select these two things to provide a content warning for. Like, why stop there, basically? Why not put more things? Like, why not? There's cats in this. What about people who have a phobia for cats? What about construction? What about people who've been in construction accidents? What about water? Like drowning. People almost drown in this. Car crashes. I'm sure there's people who are triggered by car crashes. Mobsters. I'm sure there's people who are triggered by mobsters. Men, women, cities. Like, there's a million things in here that could trigger people all the time. Like, why focus on gun violence and alcohol consumption and put an arbitrary warning about that instead of all these other things that could trigger people equally as much, you know? To me, it just, it frustrates me because it seems so arbitrary. And unless they're following some rule that they have to do it legally or something, I think it just either shouldn't be there or should have all of these warnings for everything that's in there. Yeah. And maybe if someone's thought of this more than I have, you can give me some compelling arguments and I can change my mind, but I can't think of any on the top of my head. So yeah, go ahead if you think of anything. Another funny thing, I guess, is that this short film starts with like a very abstract bunch of like people shapes and people moving around objects and stuff and doing like this weird like swinging thing. And I thought this, because I had no idea what this was, I thought this was going to be some abstract like dialogueless art piece or something with music or something, is what I gathered. But then it's revealed that it's just some company logo, and I was like, oh my god, I have no idea what this is truly. So that was pretty funny. Then you meet this cat person, I think. I guess, yeah, he's definitely a cat looking at it. Oh, a fox? No, cat. I think it's a cat. And he's like playing music and saying a poem, basically, like saying all this poetry. And I had absolutely no idea what he was saying for that whole scene. I didn't take a single thing from it. He was saying words basically to me, and they all went in one ear and out the other, right? I just cannot handle poetry, and I could not be bothered to go back and be like, let me piece together exactly what this language is saying. I got no idea, so that went over my head. But yeah, generally, I got a bunch of production things. So the lip sync, generally, it looks really good, let me say. But the lip sync feels a bit weird. Like, the voices didn't really match the animation at some, like, it just felt weird. I don't know how to explain it. It just felt weird. There's also some weird, I don't have an example here, unfortunately, but there's some weird, the way the animals are drawn is basically weird because there's sketch lines on their bodies, and the sketch lines like vary between frames, and it kind of makes them feel transparent because it's like, oh, these sketch lines like appear at some when they move their arms in certain ways and they disappear in other ways, and I didn't like that at all. like, I don't know if it's a byproduct of hand-drawn animation, and it's like, oh, there's no way to avoid this without like a cleanup pass or something over the footage. Or maybe it's like an intentional design decision, but if it is, I'm not a fan of it. So anyway, I said the main character, this character, the main character, I got no idea what his name is, but I thought his voice actor was really great. And then I said, oh, is he a professional? And at the end, they have credits for people, and the three main characters get their like big giant credits. And I looked them each up, and apparently they're all voice actors, but this guy was really good. I thought, like, I was like, yeah, obviously this guy's a professional voice actor, but I would assume the other two were, and I would assume all the others were too, probably. But anyway, and more visual things, I like how it looks generally, but I also don't like this blooming kind of effect. You can't, it's not too bad here, but there are certain scenes where it's like the edges of characters are very like overblown, like in terms of brightness, and it kind of looks weird. So I didn't like that. But other than that, it looks great. But for anyone who doesn't know, because I knew nothing about this, I looked it up afterwards. And maybe you can understand why I'm saying, oh, was this a professional actor, and me praising this production that otherwise might seem normal to you, is that apparently this was a Kickstarter. So there's like some original comic that exists, and this got funded. I think it got like $150,000 or something funding, like quite a lot. And they just made this cool animation thing. So yeah, like maybe I'm not a fan of the original comic, but I imagine it'd probably be pretty surreal and cool to have like some fan-funded like adaptation of your comic. You know, that'd be really cool. But that's it. Generally good. Maybe there'll be more one day. Who knows? Okay, so 2023 ranking so far. Number 1, Goodbye Eri, Chainsaw Man, Stray, Attack on Titan, Before Your Eyes. Then we got Minecraft at number 6. Just above, Star Wars, Tales of the Jedi, Berserk, The Last of Us, Berserk, The Golden Age 2, Arc 3. Then we get My Hero Academia Season 6, followed by The Crucible, My Hero Movie, Deadman's Questions, Bones and All, Glass Onion, Gone Home. Then we get the 3 out of 5. So The Mandalorian, slightly better than Bad Batch, I would say. Then Shining, Superliminal, Spy Family. Spy Family, I'm slightly warming up to this, a little bit. We'll see how it ranks next time. Then Ant-Man 3, Berserk, LACKADAISY at the bottom of the 3s, Algorithms to Live By, and then the worst thing I've seen all year, Mignonnes. And also, I guess I should say that the My Hero movie, I decided to move it up once. I'm getting a bit nostalgic for it, There were certain parts I liked about it. So that's it. Now, for YouTube videos, Hild Must Die by Jarky Bacon, so 29 minutes long. Hild is a character, I guess Vinland Saga spoilers. Hild is a character in Vinland Saga, and everyone loves her, and Bacon is convinced that she has to die, basically. Let me go through my notes here. Fantastic title, and thumbnail. I really like both of these, and I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up getting a lot of views. Like, I feel like this is a really like good pair of title and thumbnail where I think the only limiting factor is that I don't know how many people are currently up to date on Vinland Saga's manga. But if you are, I can't imagine a manga reader being up to date and then seeing this and choosing not to watch it, So I don't know. I think that's a really good choice of stuff like that. It's also a really interesting video in that he spends the first 12 minutes highly edited and very high production and all that to convey his idea like concisely and all that. And then he goes into a big, very long face cam ramble kind of thing. I think this is a really cool idea because it gets you to convey the core theme or core thesis that you want, but then to also expand on it optionally for the people who are interested. And there always will be people who are more interested to hear more of your thoughts. So I don't know. I think it's a really interesting idea. Maybe I'll try something like this one day. But yeah, he does a really good job of it as well. Like the face cam looks good. The audio, I think the really important thing is that the audio matches very well between the recording in the not scripted part, the edited part, and then when he transitions to the face cam, the audio stays the same and it's not like a big jarring difference in quality or something. I really like that. But yeah, I have a bunch of production notes here. So I guess I haven't given my overall thoughts. Overall thoughts, this is great. I love every one of Bacon's videos. This was fantastic. This might be his high, let me think. Beyond the Vinland quiz thing, I think that's easily his highest production value he's ever made. I think this is second. Like in terms of scripted videos, I think this is his highest production I've seen so far. So it's very well executed. I know he was trying to match the quality of his Vinland Finest introduction, and I think he absolutely did. I guess I'll probably talk about it later, but I think the introduction to this is really great. It's even the first note I have here. So I said really cool intro. The music is fantastic. The animated stuff, so the boats moving on the map, what a genius idea. The parallax shot of the hill and the background, where it's a really effective use of like parallax to make it seem 3D, and that is something I'll probably steal from him for a video one day, because I think it's a genius idea. The animation of Hild eating the sandwich, like it's so intricate. He put a lot of he did a really good job of that. There's always like anyone can animate panels, but not anyone can do it well. It's very easy to add movement to something and for it to look jarring. Bacon does a good job of making it look natural and making the animation look fluid and not weird, you know? So I commend him for that. More like production aesthetics things. I like when he's like scrolling, when he's talking about all these other people who could die and all these characters, he does a really cool aesthetic of having them scroll across the screen. It's very unique. I like that. He messes with blurring and stuff as well. That's something I have adopted from Bacon specifically. I really like when he blurs things and messes with that, like foreground and background and all that. His music choices is great. The two that I recognize were Steins Gate and a bunch of Chainsaw Man stuff. It fits very well. He has this really neat trick where he like aligns all the panels and you're zoomed in to see all these panels, and eventually you zoom out and you see that they form the word Hild. That's like a stroke of genius there. I wonder how he came up with that. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, and the face cam part was great. But I did question, I wonder how he did it, because to me the audio sounds so similar between the edited part and not the unscripted, the ramble part. And you can't see the microphone in his camera. So I just wonder how far away is it when he's like recording the edited bit, and how far away is it when he's recording the ramble bit, and like how does he do that? And did he have to like balance the audio post or something? Like it was very well done. Like it was a seamless transition basically. So well done there. So more of no, actually going on his arguments, I guess. He has a few. So go watch the video. I don't want to spoil any of the arguments, but the first one is point 0.5, which is that Hild is likely to die because there are no more likely candidates to die. It's fair enough. I think I agree. He brings up Einar and Thorfinn. His reason for Einar is that Einar is kind of become like a reactionary character. So Einar, he doesn't feel important enough to have a weight to his death. So he would have to be built up a bit more to become a candidate for dying. Then he brings up Thorfinn and says it would be ahistorical, I guess, is his big argument that he isn't a good candidate. But yeah, fair enough. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, that's good. Then there's point 1, which is that Hild is likely to die because Hild has nowhere to grow. She is confident in her worldview, like Thorfinn, Sturk, Misekbikwe, and Ivar. And she understands Thorfinn's point of view, but she chooses to go another way. So her stubbornness in sticking to who she is, and the fact that she isn't growing, not that she isn't growing, but that she doesn't need to grow, is what makes her likely to die. Now, I should say that it is possible I misunderstood this point, because I think of the 4 points he makes, I think point 1 is the most most exploratory, where point 5 is very clear, and like Hild is likely to die because there's not more likely characters, and the main point I'll talk about is about like her brain being too big, basically. Those are very defined things that he tries to prove. In this point 1, it kind of feels like a very exploratory, let me just talk about a bunch of points that kind of relate, but not portray like a very clear reason for what I'm saying, why she should die here, which is interesting. I like it. But that's why I think it's harder to kind of interpret what the point is here. But what do I got? He makes an interesting comparison between Olmer and Arnheid. Oh, Arnheid. Oh my god, I said Arnheid. Oh, it's like the good old days. And Ivar and Hild, where you've got the warmongering man in Olmer and Ivar, and then you've got the war-traumatized woman in Arnheid and Hild. And we know, and he basically says, we know how it turned out once, so maybe it'll turn out like this again. That was a very interesting and good point. Or maybe he could subvert it and go the other way. It'd be interesting as well. Okay. Then he has the main point, which is that Hild will die because her mind is world-breaking. She invents technology far before her time. She is more world-breaking than Thorkel punching a horse, Jabeth's giant head, Sekpikwe's mysticism, and Ymir. And it's interesting. He, like, on its own, this, like, I don't know how to even express this without going to the next thing. Like, all right, keep that in mind. That's his argument. Makes sense. It's interesting. But then in the addendum, he basically tries to win over the audience, which is a good idea to do, because he points out how saying that, oh, Hild is anachronistic, so she has to die, feels like a technicality. And this is a very cool thing to acknowledge to the audience, because if you don't, they're going to be thinking in their mind that it's a technicality, and they're going to dismiss your argument for that reason. But if you acknowledge it, they're going to reframe the video as kind of like a fun exploration into a bunch of arguments for Hild's death, and not like a serious plot bro kind of framing of the video, which could be interpreted like it's another framing of it, I guess. So like it kind of frames it as like Bacon isn't trying to have a serious heated argument on objectivity or anything. He just thinks it's an interesting, fun idea to convey. And I think it was a good idea to add this addendum, I think. But yeah, so the idea itself is interesting. Hild is anachronistic. But I guess I do agree with Bacon as well in the addendum, where it's like, I don't know, I could see her going off and living on her own, or she becomes like the crazy woman who everyone's like, oh, she's crazy. She invents all these weird things, and she like lives in a little hut that all the village like points to or something. I don't know. But yeah, generally great video. I liked it. I also wrote that his transition from the edited part to the face cam part, I thought that was amazing. Like the music, the joke, like the cutoff of like, oh, chapter 1, 200 or whatever. It's like, oh, I made this 6 weeks ago. I'm like, man, this is awesome. That was great. And then I have one miscellaneous note, which is that you can check this, but I said at 4 minutes, he points out a paralleled panel between Sekpikwe and Hild, where they're both like looking to the side, and they're both making like strong statements about how determined they are to see things through. And that's something I'd never noticed before. Maybe he's mentioned to me and I forgot it, but what a cool like pickup to show how these two characters are paralleled. I thought that was awesome. So that's it. Hild Must Die by Jockey Bacon. Go watch it if you're a Finland fan. It's a great video. But what am I saying? Of course, if you're watching me watch this and you're a Vinland fan, of course you've seen this, but go ahead. Next up, The Arc That Broke MHA, My Hero Academia, by Oceaniz. I think that's how you pronounce it. 1 hour and 18 minutes long. And this was recommended by Miller the Killer. Kind of. So for some context, this is a manga, like, manga analysis kind of thing. And it came out in July of 2022, and I did some research. So that puts it... it came out while the beginning of the final arc was... Also, I'm going to spoil the rest of the manga, so if you care about manga spoilers for My Hero Academia, go away. So, yeah, that puts it at the start of the final arc of the story, and I was wondering at the beginning of this, like, I wonder what he thinks is the arc that broke MHA. I'm assuming based on this picture that it was when Deku went dark, and I was right. I guess that is the mainly the arc that he was talking about. And I was wondering if he was going to critique the final arc, because for me, the final arc is the best arc so far. I guess... Yeah, the final arc so far. So I don't know why I start with this, but apparently he has extremely long pauses sometimes after a sentence. So I thought that was an interesting note I put here for some reason. I guess I put, the production elements, generally production-wise, this is fine. Like, it's a good video and everything. He's very well-spoken. I'm sure he makes good videos. I think I've seen I think he made a Chimeriant video that I saw that I was like, oh yeah, I like it. But that was a while ago, so yeah. But his argument is basically that My Hero Academia, to him, is made by the preparation, which is like established characters and events, the deliberation, which is the positioning of characters, and the consequence. So for him, there's this like trifecta: preparation, deliberation, consequence. And he argues that, for example, the Stain arc in like season 2 of the anime, I don't know what in the manga, but the Stain arc back then is good because there's the preparation. So Ida is rich and has a familial legacy and dynasty. So Stain targeting him will destroy Ida's perception of what it means to be a hero. Shoto, at the same time, has a similar thing going on, but with his famous dad, and has been primed for this stuff with Deku at the festival. So that's the preparation. Then you've got the deliberation, which is bringing Ida and Shoto together. And then you've got the consequence, which is change and turmoil in all the characters involved. Okay? So he says that's good. That's why he likes the Stain arc. So this is a bad video. I don't often say that, okay? But this is a bad video. But not because he's wrong. Like, I don't think his opinion about My Hero Academia is wrong, but he frames it's the way it's framed as though he isn't nitpicking when he is. This is a nitpicking video. He frames it as though there is an objective framework, but it isn't. So he is saying, what have I got? So generally this video is a bunch of valid nitpicks in his opinion, like, which I would agree with, which are fine, whatever, valid nitpicks. But he veils it in the cover of, actually, this is an intellectual criticism concerning preparation, deliberation, and consequence. So in my opinion, it's fine to nitpick the story. Small issues can ruin bigger stories, but to claim it's because of the deviation from some core paradigm, is just poor. Like, I don't like that you did that in this video, basically. Like, it feels like when you like something, you're shaping it to fit the preparation, deliberation, consequences paradigm, but when you don't like it, you're saying it doesn't fit that paradigm, when it can. So that was frustrating. Okay, that was one note. My next note is that I said, this video makes me so glad that I don't care about analytical storytelling like this guy does. Like, I can just enjoy a story, not have to justify it with some paradigm of like preparation, deliberation, consequence, right? I can just enjoy it, which is great. I like My Hero because I feel things, you know? There we go. That's my justification. Should I just read out there? Then I have another big rant thing. I said, the more I watch, the more I hate this video. This is truly a terrible video. It was an absolute Weasley... Oh, I don't want to insult it. I said, what an absolute Weasley person this is. But I don't know anything about him, right? Maybe he's a very nice person. I don't hate him personally. It's just the video frustrated me. He says that Let me just read this out. He says that the following follows the preparation, deliberation, consequence structure, which is true. So he says, All for One takes over Shigaraki instead of letting his apprentice take his place, while All Might lets Deku take over, and this is what leads to the good prevailing in the end. So he says that this follows the preparation, deliberation, consequence structure, which it does. It has the nice setup with these two people setting up apprentices. It has the deliberation, which is all the events that take place, and it has the consequence, where Deku prevails, and therefore the good side, their approach is correct, right? Or whatever. Like, the idea of letting your apprentice take over is proven correct, whatever. It perfectly fits his structure, and he even says it perfectly fits his structure. But then he says this is actually bad because it's not enjoyable and doesn't play into the story's strengths. So he completely throws out the entire point of this video, which is that the story is good because it follows this structure. And he says, oh, you know what? Actually, it's good because it's good. And I'm like Jesus, just say it's good then. Like, you don't have to have this pseudo-objective justification and then throw it out anyway in the middle of the video, you know? Yeah, that made me, what a Weasley little liar, dude. Anyway, I don't hate this guy. He's probably a nice guy, right? But he has insurmountable cognitive dissonance in this video, is what I would say. Okay. So let me just keep reading. He's accidentally stumbled into subjectivity and has tried to incorporate it into his objective framework. He is basically saying that there are multiple ways of interpreting the story that create the structure of preparation, deliberation, consequence, but some of these ways are more interesting than others. So the ones that I find interesting are good. So he ruined his entire video by going from an objective framework to deciding that subjectivity is king. And he just doesn't understand that, I assume, is the way it's conveyed, or the way I took from this video. So I don't know, that was funny and frustrating. And then basically after he does that, I'm basically done with this video. I stopped caring. I listened to it, but I was like, I can't, this is just ridiculous. But I have one positive thing, which is that it's a 60 frame per second video. So all the movement and stuff on the screen is really smooth, and I like that. It makes me want to do my videos in 60 frames per second in the future. I thought it looked really good. But I think that's it. Wait, what have I got? He talked about, I don't want to bring this up. Darby, abandonment of the narrative, the arc's too short. Okay, actually, one thing I do want to bring up is that he frames the entire, like, the arc he hates, he frames it terribly, in my opinion. So he thinks the most important or the most interesting part of the Deku going rogue arc is that Deku was willing to hurt himself or kill himself to win a fight. So he says this is something set up in the preparation stage, but I didn't get that at all from this arc. Like, in my opinion, the framework for this arc that makes it, that I really like, is that Deku thinks that he has the weight of the world on his shoulders, basically. He has to be like All Might, the strongest man with the heaviest burden, which has been set up entirely, so it fits his entire framework that he's talking about. But then by the end of this arc, Deku realizes that he doesn't have to do it alone, and I think that's really impactful, and it follows this preparation, the liberation consequence thing that he loves so much. But what more can I say? I don't like this video. I'm sure this guy's nice, but I don't like this at all. But anyway. Next up, a critique of Super Eyepatch Wolf by Craftsdwarf, 56 minutes long. And this was recommended by Kyle Entertainment. So my first thing is that I had to skip the first part. I like skip by pressing L or whatever. I didn't completely skip it, but at the beginning he has a bunch of Naruto spoilers, and I haven't seen Naruto. I didn't want to get spoiled, so I skipped that. So let me go through here. So generally this video criticizes, the idea is that this is why I put it after the previous video, but this basically criticizes YouTubers or big YouTubers that try to use objectivity, like the 180 rule in cinema, to provide evidence for their own subjective opinions, and he also doesn't like when they spread misinformation and when they don't cite sources. Yeah, so basically he's complaining about a very similar thing that I did in the previous about the previous video, but about a different YouTuber. And I don't know anything about Super Eyepatch Wolf. I've seen one video of his which was about like YouTuber courses or something, I think, or I think Jake Paul had a course or something. I don't know. I watched that a while ago. I thought that was interesting. He seemed like a very well-made videos or something. I don't think I've seen any others besides that one. So this was interesting. But yeah, I wrote that I'd like to make the same video one day, like a similar video to this, where I'm critiquing either a specific big YouTuber or like a genre of YouTube or something. But I'd like to make it more emotional. Like, he makes this very analytical and very like calm and collected, but I'd like to make it very like striking and cutting and like emotional, I guess. I don't know what to say. Like more emotive than he is here. So I'd be interested to do that one day. Or funny, I guess, maybe, like, I don't know, ironic, who knows? I don't know what the right word is. Yeah, so I said this video absolutely needs more context. So I know nothing. I don't know much about Craftsdwarf. I mean, I would say I probably know less about Craftsdwarf than I do about Super Eyepatch Wolf, but I know very little about either of them. I don't know what this beef is, like what's the context here. So I said, who is Super Eyepatch Wolf? Like, I mean, in this video, I know who Super Eyepatch Wolf is, but he has to explain this in the video. It needs more context. Like, who is Super Eyepatch Wolf? What type of videos does he make? Who is Craftsdwarf, the guy making it? Like, who am I, the person making it? What videos do I make? Why is he criticizing Super Eyepatch Wolf? Like, do they have a beef? Like, have they talked to each other? Like, does he watch his is he a fan? Does he hate him? Like, what's their history? Do people largely agree with Craftsdwarf opinion, or is there like is he fighting against the crowd? Is this a minority opinion? I've got no idea. Maybe everyone agrees with this and he's echoing the sentiment of the crowd. I got no idea. Is this a response video, or is it just coming out of nowhere? Like, I think he needs to say these things, because I got no idea. But maybe this wasn't intended for like a broad audience. Maybe it was just intended for that particular moment in time where there was he wanted to critique him. I don't know. Now, I feel like I am certainly missing context, I'm insane. Because at the beginning of this video, he says that this is not this is not bad. I don't hate this guy or whatever. And he says that I'm not going to refer to Super Eyepatch Wolf in the rest of this video. And then he refers to him literally throughout the entire rest of the video. So I don't know if this is some like meta joke about like maybe Super Eyepatch Wolf says things and doesn't stick to them or something, but or Craftsdwarf is insane and he has like massive cognitive dissonance. I don't know what's going on. But he literally refers to Super Eyepatch Wolf every sentence in the entire video. So I don't know what's going on. That was crazy. This Craftsdwarf also sucks at clarity. I also don't hate this guy. This is a great video. I like this video, let me just say. And I agree with him, but he needs to be clearer. And I don't mean his ideas are bad. I mean the sentences he is, and also I think this is an old video, so I'm sure he's improved since then. But his sentences are far too complex. And I understand the ideas he's trying to convey sometimes, but the complexity just betrays that. And then the sentences are so long and hard to understand that I'm like, man, you need to restate them as dumbed down versions or something. I have an example here. So he says, See if you can figure out what this says. I certainly can't. Spinning a point that specifically relates to praising originality over something perceived as unoriginal in a way that flies in the face of the numbers that would serve as much more undeniable mark of popularity is something that goes against Super Eyepatch Wolf's own thoughts and bias. So, complicated. I don't know. Maybe you could split that into like 4 sentences, or state that and then afterwards say, in other words, dumb version, you know? So anyway. But generally, yeah, this is an interesting video. I would like it if like big YouTubers like Super Eyepatch Wolf, and for me, my example, Mother's Basement, would take these criticisms aboard and try and improve the way they make videos. Maybe he has. I don't know about Super Eyepatch Wolf. I feel like this was an old video. Maybe he has improved since then. I got no idea. But I do generally agree with almost every criticism he makes of him here. However, I think the difference is that it's just the difference of taste, where Kraftsdorf seems to imply that he doesn't like these type of analytical videos anyway, so he's not that interested. Whereas to me, I do kind of enjoy when a video falls into this tropes, like of claiming to be objective but actually being subjective. I do enjoy that when it's framing something I like in a positive manner. Like, I'm fine with trying to hype up something I like by using some pseudo-objective framework, even though I know it's fake. I just enjoy the way it makes me feel, being like, yeah, my series really is good, isn't it? Hunter Hunter, Chimera and Target, it is so good, right? I enjoy that. So I don't want it to go away completely. I just want, like, I don't know, I just want it to go away for the bad stuff. I understand it's a completely incoherent position. No one can... I'm a complete contradiction, but, you know, I like it when they do it the good things. I hate it when they do it the bad things. What can I say? Anyway. Okay. I don't even know what this point is. It would be interesting to make a video where okay. Yeah, when I was watching this, the fact that he at the beginning mentioned, don't worry, throughout this video I won't mention Super Eyepatch Wolf directly, and then he does. And some of these points are like so complex, like that line I read out before, where I was like, okay, there's no way a sane person can understand this in one viewing. So I got to the point, like near the end of the video, where I was like, okay, so is he gonna like twist this and talk about how he doesn't actually care about the issues he's talking about? He cares about the types of video he's currently making. Maybe he's actually gonna put like a plot twist in the end and being like, I actually tricked you. I don't like videos that are overly convoluted and are hypocritical when they say that I'm not going to say something and then they do it. But no, that wasn't the case at all, I don't think, unless I missed the point. Maybe that is what he was trying to do, but that's kind of the vibe I got at some point. So either he's like a super gigabrain genius, or he's like, he just, I don't know, maybe I have no idea. Something's going on, you know, weird video, I would say. But the thing I was going to say is that I think it would be interesting to make a video like that. Maybe I'll do that one day, I don't know. It's probably difficult to execute very effectively, but I feel like he would have executed, if he like put the twist at the end and said that, I think it would have been a really great video. But anyway, it is generally a good video either way, but that would have been really, really unique. Another very general thing is that, not exactly what's going on here, like they're not the same critiques of like, style or anything, but I'd like to make a video critiquing the H3 podcast. That's something I've been passionate about before I even started making YouTube videos, because a lot of the criticism, I would dare say all the criticism they get on YouTube is very bad faith and very uninformed of the H3 podcast. So it's very easy when the podcast gets criticism, it's very easy for them to dismiss it because it's clearly bad faith. I think they need to receive criticism in good faith, where it's by someone who likes what they do, which is me, although they frustrate me greatly at most of the times, I dare say. I do like their content. I understand it very well. I've seen every single episode, and they have big problems that you can address in good faith, I think. So I would like to do some criticism of the H3 podcast at some point, but I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but one day. Okay. Now I have an actual legitimate, like this video did give me something interesting to think about personally, like when I'm making not videos, but when I'm thinking about media and stuff. So let me read it out. It's probably the most coherent if I read it out. So he critiques Super Eyepatch Wolf for evoking the words effort and passion as praise for the original manga, for some random manga that he was talking about. He says that effort is an empty praise because the fact that an anime was made means that effort was already put into it. He says that passion is an empty praise because mediocrity can have plenty of effort and passion put behind it. So, fine. So this made me question myself, because I often say things like this, that passion in a production is very clear to me. And when I see that it's clear to me, I like it. And my two examples are Mob Psycho 100 and Chainsaw Man. In my mind, these are clearly very passionate productions. And it makes me think, like, when I heard him say that, I was like, why do I think passion... why do I think these are passionate productions, and why do I think this is good, I guess? And it made me realize that when I say passion, I don't actually mean passion in an anime's production. So let me see. I suppose when I say passion in an anime production, I don't actually mean that the people who made the anime were passionate, but that the anime has elements that look like they would be difficult to make, could have been made much more easily or generically, and have a lot of attention to detail. And the examples I have are... in Chainsaw Man, it has a very unique way of framing things and using these complex live action shots and dynamic motion that's very difficult to do, that didn't need to be done to convey things, and usually isn't the case in other productions. So to me, that seems like you can use this word that isn't really passion, but is similar to passion, and I like that. It has nothing to do with the people behind it. It has to do with how the product compares to other things similar to it. And the other example I have is the mid-episode eye catches for Mob Psycho 100. So in the middle of the episode, they'll have these really cool, like, hand-drawn kind of like small animations of characters like getting a popsicle like stick and seeing like they won a prize or something, right? Those don't have to be there. The fact that it exists and it doesn't exist in other things, and it looks like it would be incredibly difficult to do, but it didn't have to be there, to me implies some sort of passion, although it has nothing to do with the people behind it, I guess. So that would be my defense of the word passion, I guess, to this video. But yeah, it was interesting. It made me think. It was a good video generally, but albeit a very confusing video of what the intentions are behind it. But anyway, this is okay. I said this is going to be a very short video, but it's not. All right. Anyway, so next up, Why Griffith is Legally Innocent, Berserk, by Ciclet, 16 minutes long. So, I'm a big fan of Ciclet. I loved his first Why Griffith Did Nothing Wrong video. It blew up. Like, he's got a lot of views. He's like 50k or something. I don't know, a ridiculous number of views. A lot of backlash. Everyone hates him. I was looking forward to this because I think the first video was very well made. He portrayed some very novel ideas. It was very well edited, especially for a first video. And I was interested. So 6 months later, he makes this one. I attended the premiere, so this is actually, I think this is the only video I've ever seen premiere on YouTube, like watch it live as it's airing. Oh no, actually that's not true, it's the second one. I watched Mia's episode 200 reaction, I think, live. That was, oh no, Planet Test discussion. I watched part of that live, but this is the first one where I actually intended to watch it live and saw the whole thing. But yeah, I don't have much to say on this. I thought it was really well done. Like, I left a comment saying, I don't know, I said it's good basically, but generally I thought it was a very engaging video. It's well thought out and well argued, I would say, and that's just my big takeaway there. Like, Ciclet is very good at making videos. Like, I think he punches above his pay grade, where this feels like a bigger YouTuber made it than someone who's only making their second YouTube video, you know? So he did a very good job. I think his narration is great. I think the editing is great. I think what's interesting is that he presents himself as very legally well-informed in this video, and I have no idea if he is. Like, maybe what he's saying is completely wrong, but it sounds convincing, which is interesting. Like, I wonder if a lawyer saw this, would they be completely triggered of like, oh, he's making all these mistakes? I got no idea. It would be interesting. It'd be funny if he, like, because in the last video, he triggered like all these like Berserk stands. It'd be funny if he triggered some like legal scholars in this or something. That'd be really funny. But who knows? I had some insight into the production of this. So at some point he didn't know whether to include music or not. And I agree. I always have that struggle when I get to a video and I'm like, do I really have to put music? But he did include it, and I think the music works very well. So I'm kind of glad he did include it. I like his accent. I think it's better here in the first one. Very refined, you know. Then I said that it's truly amazing how much beef Ciclet created with his first analysis video. Like, he upset big YouTubers like Real Life Ryan, Maskman, And then he upset like a lot of random people, like that guy who wanted to beat him up, and Rom Hatcher or Hacker or whatever. A lot of random people are just angry at him, and it's really funny and great. Um, what else is there? Um, the Griffith transformation clip that he uses, I thought it worked really well with the music. I was like, wow, that's kind of maybe even better than the original, you know? And it like tied in with his video seamlessly. Like it was a good transition to the audio of the thing with the music in the background of Griffith's transformation. So that was really good. And I got a shout out, unbelievable. He said my videos, my Attack on Titan videos were good. And I was like, hell yeah. And then he showed my latest video and he's like, except for this one, I didn't, it's bad or something. I'm like, hell yeah, I agree. So true. So yeah. Overall, great video. Go watch it. Don't get triggered by the title. Come on, let's be everyone who watches Berserk. Let's have an open mind. All right. Let's see what others think about Griffith. All right. But that's that. All right. Next up, Evangelion. I Feel Sick by Hiding in Public, and it's so damn short, 11 minutes long compared to every other goddamn long video I've seen in this list so far. So this was recommended by Kyle Entertainment. And I really don't have much to say for this. I thought this was... actually, you know what? What it is this is a mix of like Shinji character analysis and like Ava character analysis, but also personal anecdote. And I dare say the personal anecdote is probably the predominant reason this video exists. Like it's the predominant idea I got from this. So what I said about this is that I think this is a great video that I don't understand at all. Like I love this video, and I could not tell you what it's trying to say. I vibe with it, but I don't understand it, is what I would say. So I don't know what to say beyond that. Like it's a person conveying their idea, conveying how they feel by trying to explain how they relate to a character in a story. But the way they relate is so personal that I don't understand it, and I also don't care to understand it, and that makes this video good. Where I don't have to think, I just watch this video, I feel the music, I feel what he's saying, I understand, I have an image of Shinji in my head, I understand what he's saying, and I see the footage that he took when he's going on his walk and all that, and I kind of feel the vibes of this video and I like it. So that's what I would say. And I also, my last note, I have very, very little to say about this. The bad editing, like generally I would say this is a very like low production quality kind of thing. But the bad voice editing and the like kind of bad quality mic and all that, and the weirdly long pauses he puts at certain points, I think it makes this video perfect. Like I think this video would be a much worse video if it was highly produced and had great music and everything. And I like how it feels like a very personal reflection that gets to the narrator, the person making this video, emotionally. Like it doesn't necessarily have to reach the audience. I mean, it doesn't have to make it feel like he's trying to make the audience feel something. It feels like he's trying to make himself feel something. I don't know. Everything I've said probably sounds completely crazy and delusional, but this was a very unique video. So I liked it. Interesting. Now, guess what? There's some lost media. This is a growing section that I'm sure will happen over this next year, but this is stuff that I dropped. So I started doing them and I intended to include them in this list, but I dropped them. So I don't have much to say on these because I didn't finish them. But the first was the return of the Obra Dinn. So this seems like a very good game. This was recommended by my friend Josh. All right, shout out to Josh. And I played it for 25 minutes. It looks really good. Like it's a very interesting way of rendering the world, I guess. It feels like it's an old monitor or something. And I think there were some options of like what you could choose to display the world as. Like there were different render engines or whatever. Not render engines, you know what I mean. But this was the default one and I stuck with it. But yeah, let me see. So the one note I said is, so I've played like 20 minutes so far, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. And the book that you get has way too much information, and I'm completely overloaded. Like I got no idea what to do. There's like a book with a million things I'm meant to do. I'm just like lost. And then I said that I feel like I feel like I would enjoy this, but it feels like there's three things here. So one, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I feel like I'm constantly trying to catch up all the time. Two, I feel like I'm missing important information all the time. And three, I just don't have the patience to read through all the information slowly. Like, if there was a book that would read out to me like what I'm meant to be doing or like what I'm reading and stuff, not a book. If there was a voice reading it out to me, sorry, then I think maybe I would enjoy this more. But yeah, it was too difficult. I felt like I was constantly behind, and I just didn't have the patience for it. But yeah, seems interesting. I'm sure I'd like it a lot. But that was that. The next thing I dropped was the last thing I dropped here, the Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, or Rowling, I don't know, by ContraPoints. So this is a long video. I watched the first 40 minutes and I just dropped it because it just was not interesting whatsoever. And sorry, Kyle, this was recommended by Kyle Entertainment. But he probably knew I would have strong feelings about this, I guess, because I told him that I tried watching Envy, which is another video. Or was it? I think it was Envy. I watched like the first 2 minutes and I was like, I don't like this video. But I gave this a second chance. So my experience with ContraPoints is that I saw her on the H3 podcast like many years ago. So I know some things, like I know that she's trans. And I know that was a big deal of the podcast, like they talked about it. I know that she has a fight with J.K. Rowling, and I think she calls her Joanne for like it's like a meme or something. And I also said I watched like 5 minutes of one of her videos way back, and it was like the most unbearable internet drama nonsense that I had no interest in whatsoever. So I guess what I don't have much notes at all, but what I just she tells the story of the past of like some person, I can't remember the name. I didn't write notes, but it's just a very boring way of, like I've seen history stories be told in a much more engaging manner. This just was not engaging, I don't think. It has a bunch of cringy like millennial humor, which is hard to articulate. If you know, you know. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're never gonna understand. Like this, it's just a very like I hate when millennials just make this humor. I don't know. I can't handle the self-aware comedy. She makes like she makes a bunch of self-aware jokes, and I cringe at it. And the whole first 40 minutes, well, not the whole, because there's obviously that history stuff. A lot of the first 40 minutes is just like some drama about some podcast that I don't know or care about. Like maybe I'm meant to like watch videos before this that'll explain it, but like, it seems like she, based on my very limited understanding and framing, it seemed like she was invited to a podcast and she accepted, and then the backlash made her reject it, like to disavow it, and now she's like trying to save face by like making a video. I'm sure people are gonna get angry. Maybe that's completely wrong, but that's the impression I got from this first 40 minutes. I don't care about this drama. I got no idea, so I dropped it. But you know what? Maybe one day I'll pick it up. Same with Obra Dinn. Who knows? Maybe in the comments people will tell me actually ContraPoints this video is really good, or maybe you'll recommend another video of hers that is really good and I'll watch it and I'll like it. But this wasn't for me. But yeah. Anyway, that's it. So this is a very long one, I think. Maybe I should stop saying that I think these are short at the beginning. Maybe that'll make them short, actually. But yeah, so give me suggestions. Movie, anime, TV shows, games, books, YouTube videos, whatever. And I will almost certainly consume it. If it's an anime, 12 episodes or less. Movies, if it isn't a comedy. TV shows, 6 episodes or less. Or games, around 6 hours to finish. So that's it. Thank you.